Hi, everyone.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Bo.
Hello
Hey.
again.
How was everyone?
Great.
Good.
Good.
Thanks. Doing well.
How's the
Yep.
exercises been?
Brain pushes. Yeah.
Pretty
Say that
good.
again?
Yep.
Well, I get why when I asked you earlier about how to structure my notes for work, right? If I was in a webinar or if it was something else, why you replied to my tweet and you're like, you know what, just do the exercises, you'll get it. Because top down versus bottom up answered all my questions. Like everything, I totally get where to put things now. So thank you for being patient with me.
Thank you for being patient with me. You know, I think there's something about struggling with it though that I really admire. I mean, in a sincere way, it's like when I struggle with something, I know that it's important first off, but then I also know that when I get to the other side, it's like it makes all of that effort, all of the faltering and the failure of it all, just it makes it all worth it, in my opinion.
It also means you can explain it to somebody else a little bit easier.
Yes.
And kind of navigate around the pitfalls.
Who is that? Is that Joshua?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's Joshua. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, no, that's just it. So, I mean, I spent a lot of time before I did this here, training other guys to do, specific things. And typically how it works is when you're a trainer, you've already done it, so you've performed whatever task this is, wherever it's at, and you lived. So that's the key. If you're doing a dangerous job and you live, odds are you're either really, really lucky or really, really good, or a combination of both. I'm probably more the lucky than the good.
I'm
when
lucky.
lucky, when you're showing somebody else that, you can kind of show them. You can lead them through it. Be like, hey, don't step there. That's bad. Or hey, this is something that I saw, and under these circumstances. And one, it kind of solidifies it for you. And two, they're learning or whatever it is you're teaching, but they're learning from someone who has the experience. They're more apt to pay attention as well.
Here's a question for you all. I mean, just to piggyback off of what Joshua was saying was, do you feel like once you grok this, that you'd be there for other people to sort of like, because for me that's what motivates me is like, once I saw the value in this. I mean, it's a simple, lightweight structure, utilizing the technology that's available. But then it's like I'm more keen to want to show other people how to do it, and then it's like this virtuous cycle up because then it's like I'm showing other people how to do it, but then it's forcing me to explain it to other people, and that's forcing me to learn it even more, and then it's just like this mastery starts happening.
Well, are you asking the question about are you going to share how to other people to use Rome and to use it in this style, or are you talking about what you want to write and learn in Rome to share that with other people?
I don't know. Maybe both. I think the joy of all of this is that, when I was doing the Rome tour with Rob Hasefield, it was like he said something that really, really resonated with me. It was like, listen, if people don't get anything out of it, at least they'll know how to use Rome. And it's all vanilla Rome too. I'm not using any JavaScript. I'm using light CSS sprinkles. I don't use any queries. And I think it's both. What are you thinking, Nikki?
I want to be able to share what I'm learning, like what Joshua said. It's like about how I can communicate something clearly, and the fact that I get to use Rome to do it and learn how to use Rome along the side is just the icing on the cake, because it's the best thing I've ever found to catch everything that I've got in my spaghetti brain and making it like lasagna sheets that are easy, like Joshua said, to be able to share with others. And that's what I want to be able to do.
Spaghetti brain. Oh.
Well, you put one strand and everything moves, it's like everything's connected. So at the moment, I am unable to focus and deliver one strand to someone else who isn't connected to my spaghetti. So
Well, I think you're right too. I mean, go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
I would definitely like to try to show someone else this system, because I think that's, from my experience, that's the best way for me to keep it, in my head is to explain it to someone else. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I'm not sure I will get to the competency level to do it, but I would like to be able to do that.
I think
I
the
would-
more
Yeah.
people you show,
Yeah.
the better you get, right? I mean, you think of
Yeah.
the best sports teams, right? The best sports teams didn't get better until they played a team that was a little bit better than them, right? Then they had to learn a little bit more. They had to adapt. So I think the more people we show, the more people it brings into the community, the more ideas there are. Somebody has a great idea that we haven't thought about. We add it to our system, then everybody levels up, right? Everybody gets better, and that process continues.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because you also have to know that this is all new, and this is like what I'm walking everyone through is just the basic foundational elements, but what you build on top of that, like Brother Spirit, like Joel Chan, like Wilbert, what you build on top of that is what I'm excited for.
I think
Yeah.
that's why we're here.
Oh, sorry. Can I chime in? It's Geneva from Cambridge. I was just thinking with what you were saying, what everyone was kind of talking about, is that we're all kind of students of life, aren't we? So we're kind of in itself, yes, we're talking about Rome, and yes, we're talking about Zettelkasten, but at the end of the day, if a conversation like at work, I'll just be randomly talking, oh, I'm in a book club, and that gets a conversation going, and these little kind of snippets of conversations we learn from each other, or that's what I take from other people, like little conversations. I'm like, oh, I remember that person said that. Oh, I'm learning. You're continually like expanding your mind, whatever kind of content you're. Yes, like that's why we're here. We're trying to take all of that down, but well, as much as we can, really. Yeah, students. Yeah, we're all students of life. I always think.
What's been the most difficult part of the exercises and the work that you've been putting in so far, just for everyone?
I'm trying
Waiting
to build
get
a
to the
morning
meat of it
habit.
all.
Sorry.
I'm ready to dive into fleeting notes and literature notes and everything, and it's the waiting that's hard for me because I feel like, I mean, I know it's coming, but I like to jump to solutions, but I think the long time period is actually going to be a better, maybe bitter pill to swallow. But I trust you, Bo, but it's hard. It's been hard to wait.
And then
Yeah.
Nikki, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm building the habit and trusting the process, and I'm really enjoying the not having to have everything sorted or fixed yet, and feeling confident that that's okay in Rome, and that everything else will happen later because of the compound effects. And the more you put in, the more you'll get out, and all of that sort of stuff that I hear you guys talk about. And I'm looking forward to seeing that on day 24. I think you said, Bo. But I've got to the place where I'm really excited to wake up in the morning and open my laptop and get into the task. But the problem is like it's not there until like an hour and a half later. So that's where I'm like, I'm waiting there, struggling with you, Chad. Then but yeah, no, it's brilliant. Thank you.
And I think the hardest part for me was the beginning, because I kind of felt like Daniel LaRusso, right? You're like, sand the floor. And I'm like, I'm sanding the floor. I'm painting your house. I'm writing this stuff. And it wasn't until you came back and you said, okay, now show me sand the floor. Show me paint the house, that it all made sense. So then now when you ask me to do stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm invested. There's a meaning to do this. I need to do this because I don't know what's coming. But before I'm like, where's he going with this? What's this all about? Then when it clicked, it made sense.
Let me ask you all this, just from what you've gathered so far, why do you think there's so much difficulty, like sort of comprehending and really understanding, this way of working where it's, instead of, I know what I'm looking for and it's like, I'm going to drill down into that. It's more like, I don't know what it is yet and I'm just going to keep adding to it. Why do you think there is this sort of, because obviously if there wasn't resistance, then I would just show you how you do it. And then like everyone goes, oh, okay, I get it. But what do you think that is?
I mean, for me, I think you essentially came along with the system and you said 2 + 2 = 5 now, and I can show you how that works. Because it's totally different for me than anything else that I've ever done. So it's kind of like I have to shift my mind. I kind of have to adjust and I have to try it because I'm used to notes and Evernote and folders and all these other things because that's what I've always done.
Can I use a different metaphor? Instead of 2 + 2 = 5, what if it was like imaginary numbers?
That's even better.
Imaginary numbers, it's like, well, how am I going to solve this equation? Well, let's invent this idea of imaginary numbers. They're not real, but it's what people have built upon imaginary numbers is quantum mechanics, and just from the little bit I know, but it's like, you know what I mean? What you're able to build off of that. And it's basically just sort of, we have all the numbers here, but now we're going to add all these numbers here. And then from there, we've got a whole picture. I look at it. The reason I say it like that is because all I'm going to say is that there's a natural response when we're confronted with another way of doing things. And especially something that's fundamental, like maybe even diametrically opposed to how we've been taught, maybe in school. And
Goes
so
against tradition. Goes against tradition.
Yes.
Yeah, for me, since 6th grade, do an outline, start at the top, work down.
Yeah.
So what happens if, I've talked about this before, but what happens if, yes, we've been taught that, but what if you were praised for it? What if you received accolades because of how well you outlined, or how well you did a top-down way of working? This is why I elongate the whole process, is because, I'm not going to just sweep the carpet from underneath you. It's like, no, let me show you what all this is first, all these little Lego pieces, and then we'll start building it out. And so that's what I see the difficulty is with all of this. And so all that being said, I think, let's jump into the book. I think, Jeff, you're up first. Let me go ahead and share the screen. Boom, boom. There we go. Voila. And here we are. Chapter 1. Listen, we're not in a rush here. Are you guys in a rush? I'm not in a rush.
But at least it's the chapter that says everything you need to know.
Exactly. We're just thriving over here.
Yeah.
That's the trick. Once we're done with this chapter, we're finished.
Is Jeff here? Jeff, where are you at? I don't think he's here. He's not in here. Let's go to the next person. Joshua.
Yeah, I got it. Hopefully the audio is coming through. I typically don't run this mic into Zoom, but whatever.
Sounds great.
It'll work. All right. Lights out.
Again, by the way, rules are, there are no rules. So, we do have how many people? 16 people signed up for the list, but yeah, read as long as you want. You can stop whenever you want. Anyone can jump in whenever you want. We're just having fun here.
All right, here we go. So as students, researchers, and nonfiction writers, we have so much more freedom than others to choose what we want to spend our time on. Still, we often struggle with the most with procrastination and motivation. It is certainly not the lack of interesting topics, but rather the employment of problematic work routines that seem to take charge of us instead of allowing us to steer the process in the right direction. A good structured workflow puts us back in charge and increases our freedom to do the right thing at the right time. Want me to press on?
Just say pass and then to the next person, but however long you want to go.
Yeah, sure. I can read. I grew up doing it. Having a clear structure to work in is completely different from making plans about something. If you make a plan, you impose a structure on yourself. It makes you inflexible. To keep going according to plan, you have to push yourself and employ willpower. This is not only demotivating, but also unsuitable for open-ended processes like research, thinking, or studying in general, where we have to adjust our next steps with every new insight, understanding, or achievement, which we ideally have on a regular basis and not just as an exception. Even though planning is often at odds with the very idea of research and learning, it is the mantra of most study guides and self-help books on academic writing. How do you plan for insight, which by definition cannot be anticipated? It is a huge misunderstanding that the only alternative to planning is aimless messing around. The challenge is to structure one's workflow in a way that insight and new ideas can become the driving forces that push us forward. We do not want to make ourselves dependent on a plan that is threatened by the unexpected, like a new idea, discovery, or insight.
That sounds really good.
Could we pause here for a second?
Of course.
This paragraph means a lot to me. I just think it was such a large portion of my life was driven by willpower. Okay, I've got to get this section done. If I get this section done, I reward myself with taking a break or whatever. And it was always totally demotivating to try to get some very interesting project done by just sort of slogging through, so that the idea or the promise that there's a better way, that if you just approached it a different way, you wouldn't need the willpower. The process itself, the creativity, the writing, the thinking itself would basically carry you along. That to me is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's also interesting. I've sort of thought about this for the last 6 months or so, that you can actually get very far in life by just forcing yourself, memorizing things, not really understanding on first principles. You can just memorize facts, get through exams. You can actually proceed very far in life without ever really knowing what you're doing, and without any creativity, and actually not contributing anything, but just ticking the boxes and getting through. And our society is almost structured in that way, where you can do that and get by. It's quite amazing. But as Michael said, I think it's fundamentally unsatisfying. It's not really a way you want to live. But it's interesting that you can get that far just by doing that.
Can I play devil's advocate? Because I also feel like, but it's still beneficial to have that sort of top-down syllabus, structured, semestered, everything is in a quarter, everything is, in this way. I think it is still, how would you say? I think it's still important. I think it's still very effective. No? What do you think, Dr. K?
I think everything is, why not both? And I think it should be both. And I think what I'm saying is, with the top-down thing, you can just go all the way through with the top-down thing. And, what's the point of that? You need to, I could, at school, I could pass chemistry without even understanding anything about it, just memorize a few facts, pass the exam, forget about it the next day, move on. What's the point of that? That's...
What I hear you saying is that it's not satisfying. It's not self-satisfying.
I don't think it's even effective. I think it's not effective. If you don't understand something deeply, how do you make connections between something if all you've memorized is just a few superficial facts, which are enough to get you through the exam? But, when you've got something first principles and you are linking things together, it's just much more effective than the surface level understanding.
Do you think that's a problem right now, with people just seeking out the superficial, surface level facts of life?
Of course it is.
Yeah, I do, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
stirring the pot. I'm stirring the pot. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm stirring the pot.
I think in the UK, I think it's the opposite. I think everyone's fed up of that superficial, just getting past and everything. I think people want authenticity and they want real stuff. And that's why actually doing something that means something is different. And also, Dr. K, you are assuming that people have been able, the clever people can get by on the system, which compounds the system, whereas the people who don't think in that traditional boxed way really are outsiders to the whole system, and they have to be more creative about how to come in. But I think, Bo, what you said about putting some confinements in place and having some bits are really important, and I think some boundaries and some structure helps with some creativity as well. So, for example, just paint everything blue for once might unlock your mind to doing something completely different if you've always used a whole palette of color or something.
Yeah,
I agree with what Dr. K said a lot too. I mean, coming from my space on the network engineering side, you bring people onto your team and you have these people who have passed their certifications, right? They've gone through the top down, but they never learned how to apply anything. And so when something's broken and they have to fix it, they know the how, but they don't know the why, because all they did was pass an exam that doesn't test you on the real world. Right. So it's how do you take that knowledge and information that you have and then apply it and make it actionable? And I think sometimes that's where
Yeah.
it's missing.
Yeah, and I really think that at least in the US, our educational system rewards that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
You get rewarded because you got a good mark on a quiz or
Yep.
a final exam.
Exactly.
I went through law school hoping that it was like a liberal arts education where you'd be exposed to all these concepts. And instead, it was no, you just learn these formulas and spit it back out. Otherwise, you get a mediocre mark.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, that reminded me of the top-down and bottom-up lesson that we had, where the traditional approach here is by giving a strict top-down approach to learning and combining this with extrinsic gratification. And so what's missing, I think, is that you need to add something like an intrinsic gratification for yourself, so an interest, and this combine this with a bottom-up approach. That's what I thought when Bo mentioned that that also the Zettelkasten is a combination of both. So I think both have their values, but if one takes over too much, and of course the extrinsic motivation gets too steep by just going for grades and something like this without acknowledging that there is an intrinsic motivation, then I think we're on the wrong path.
What happens when so what I hear you say is that when I think about top down, I think of very rigid structures. When I think about bottom up, I think of just openness, just the personality type of like openness to experiences, right? And what happens when it falters on the side of too rigid, right? Then it becomes this hardened, crystallized, like concrete thing. When it's on the other side, right, where it's just open, then there's no sort of direction, and then you're just sort of going in circles. And so I think it is, you
But
need both.
You don't necessarily have to. So you could be going in circles, but you don't necessarily have to be going in circles. You could be, I don't know. That was my struggle. This is Deb Hart.
Hi, Deb.
Hi. That was my struggle in trying to figure out. I came up with the bottom up was I said, oh yeah, this is discovery mode. But it can't be just hither, thither, and non-discovery. It has to have something has to be directing it some kind of way. And that's where I'm still struggling. I still haven't gotten the what of the direction or the how of the direction without smothering the thing,
Without
yeah,
smothering.
so
That's a good phrase.
So I
That's a
have
good
something if I
analogy.
can chime in on that. I play music. I'm sure there's musicians out there, but you learn music theory and you kind of you master your craft as you go. And it's not until you reach a certain point, whatever number of hours you want to put on it, that you can start to improv. And your ability to take a concept and break it apart and put it back together in a way that suits you and is also pleasing to others, that doesn't come, day one, hour one, music theory. That typically comes when you've mastered everything and you're able to share it with other people. And I think that's kind of the way I look at it, like the bottom up approach. You need both, right? So, I mean, you want to meet somewhere in the middle, but you need both to kind of get the most out of it. I don't think one way is better than the other. One just comes in at a later time.
And the Zettelkasten does have both. Everything that we're going to walk through does have both. And just to give you a little preview of that, the index is actually, every time you add a new permanent note to the index or the permanent notes page, it's all top down. But how it's connected, how the ideas emerge is all bottom up. And we'll walk through all of that. But right now we're still at this sort of the base level of understanding what all these pieces are first. And also sort of breaking down ways in which we get in the way. That's really been my focus for this week. Is just, there's a lot of things that get in the way. Like I realize that a lot of times when I tell someone to capture an idea, I mean, I'm going to talk about this today in today's lesson, but when I tell someone to capture an idea, they actually don't zoom in tight enough. They get it all because they're scared that they're going to miss out on something. And so I forget who was talking about it, but you know, this sort of let's just get on with it. And it's like I want to be able to get on with it, but then if we get on with it too fast, then what happens is when you start building out your own Zettelkasten, and you're like, well, my fleeting notes are just getting too long. It's like, yeah, because you're not zoomed in, you're not closed in tight enough. You're taking the whole paragraph instead of the phrase. And so yeah, there's just a lot of things to touch upon in order to sort of build it all out. And then as it starts coming together, you're like, oh wow, okay, I get it. And you all will. As long as you do the work, you all will. It's proven.
Yeah, I like to say, fail early and fail often.
Yes.
And then you'll get all that out of the way, and you can fall back on that and learn from it.
And I do have to say though, it's easy for us to say that right now because we're not failing right now. We're actually doing pretty good, but it does suck. Like, you got to admit, it does kind of suck. Like when you're, come on, like, you know what I mean? Like, ow, that kind of sucks. Well, let's keep going. But you know what I mean? And it is. Shall we keep going?
Oh, can you?
Yes.
I had a question about zooming in tight enough. I mean, my focus right now has just been trying to get everything out. So that's not really making sense to me right now.
Oh yeah. Well, you also have to understand that, you know, that's a typical pattern that I've seen as well. It's like it's almost like, you know, when I was a kid growing up, it was like we were never allowed to like spend a night at anyone's house, right? We were never allowed to like play with toys or like G.I. Joes or anything like that. The minute that I spent a night at someone's house, I'll stay up until like 5 a.m. just playing with Transformers. I'm getting chills. I remember that, right? And so, but it doesn't mean I can do that every day. It doesn't mean that I want that every day. But when I first experience it, then it's like, oh man, I'm just gonna do everything. I want to experience everything. And a lot of times that's kind of like what Autobots rolled out. That's kind of like what it feels like. It's like, oh my God, there's a way to sort of like capture everything. And what happens is you go, okay, I know what this feels like. I know what a little bit of freedom feels like. Now let's bring it back together. Does that make sense? Is that?
Yeah, and maybe I'm just not there yet. I started with the opposite problem, so maybe this is spending the night at a friend's house, just trying to get past the idea of writing too little and censoring too much. So I'm still filling that out.
And then it helps to have positive feedback too, which you're not going to get for a while.
Yeah.
But following up on Stephen's point, if you're reading something that is not one idea, it's like 5 different ideas. I mean, unless you're in a position where you know enough to say, well, this is the one that is the most important, or this is the one that resonates with me the most, it's hard for me to decide what to leave out.
Yeah, I mean, my thing with just writing without really any censor, I was kind of feeling like that was the idea behind bottom up, is just wherever it goes, you know, no real endpoint, and just get it out, and you can turn that into go back through and think about what was actually important and pull that out and kind of leave the rest of those fleeting notes. I mean, aren't they going to be discarded if they're not really turned into something later anyway?
I don't want to get ahead of. What if I put it like this? Okay. Say you're reading a book, and this is going to be talking about today's lesson as well. But say you're reading a book, you're reading an article, you're reading whatever it is, or you're watching something, you're listening to something. You're sort of going and you're going and you're going, and then all of a sudden something pops out at you, right? And you know, it's almost like your unconscious mind is looking for it. This is like the missing key, whatever that is. But it's that moment. And I almost look at it like what we're doing in the fleeting notes phase is when we get to that moment, it's a very ephemeral time frame. And this is why when we get into week 6, it's all about slamming this workflow as tight as we can so there's no friction at all. For instance, I had a workflow where I would have a Siri shortcut that would capture the YouTube timestamp and then it would also capture the link, and then I could do a Otter voice memo. I realized that when I had to verbalize the timestamp, I would lose the fleeting note. But if I typed the timestamp, I would capture the fleeting note. And how I know if I've captured a fleeting note is I have to get away. So basically, I have this thing that pops out at me. I don't know what it is yet. I just know that I've got this feeling, right? Or I've got this notion. I've got this unconscious, it's your intuition. Like, how do you scientifically prove what intuition is? I don't know. But you know what that feels like. Everyone knows what that feels like. So as we're reading, we get to that point. Spider sense, exactly. You get to that point, and what we're doing in the fleeting notes isn't necessarily just abstracting out our ideas. It's actually going, this stood out to me. What the hell is it? And what happens is, as we write it out, we'll get to this point where we're like, oh. And typically what I do is I just look at the very last sentence, or the, like, you know how you have this wall of text? When I'm reading through people's responses, what I do is I open this all up, I see all the text, and I read the last sentence. And usually it's, holy shit, or oh my God, or wow, or you know what I mean? It's usually that aha moment. And that's how you know if you've captured it. Because what happened was the unconscious mind, which we don't have control over, showed us what we needed to capture. We abstracted out all we need. We cleared away all the mess until we got to the nugget at the bottom. And then we go, this is what I want to add to my Zettelkasten. Because we don't know what it is yet.
Right.
And I'm sure there's some sort of Jungian psychology attached to it, but I can't explain it. It's smarter than I am.
Usually though, that last sentence it's the aha moment, but it's not. It's like it's like the 100 characters that we did to that we just can't relate to anything anymore. So I guess the whole structure sort of is the relation, and then maybe we can create a permanent note out of the distillation of it all. But that's the fleeting note you're saying, like that last bit.
I don't want to say anything. I don't want to give it away.
I mean, sometimes like I'll read what I wrote and I get to the bottom and I ask myself, do I really feel that way? Am I really that vulnerable? Right? I mean, but because it's me talking to myself, and then there's the answer. And sometimes that's a little hard to accept.
There's always a plot twist in the last line.
Luke, I'm your father, right?
Or you get to the last line, they say, never mind.
Shall we? Joshua, are you going to pass?
Oh, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I can pass. I mean, I could read all night long, but I'll pass.
Patrick, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, I do.
Perfect.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
You should. Great. So let's go on. Unfortunately, even universities try to turn students into planners. Sure, planning will get you through your exams if you stick to them and push through, but it will not make you an expert in the art of learning, writing, note-taking. There is research on that. See chapter 1.3. Planners are also unlikely to continue with their studies after they finish their examinations. They are rather glad it is over. Experts, on the other hand, would not even consider voluntarily giving up what has already proved to be rewarding and fun. Learning in a way that generates real insight is accumulative and sparks new ideas. The fact that you invested in this book tells me that you would rather be an expert than a planner. That's great.
Let's beat European reading room. Come on. Let's get through this paragraph. Do you want to pass or you want to keep going, Patrick?
No, I do this. I want to beat them. I want to be the one. And if you are a student seeking help with your writing, the chances are that you are already aim high too. The chances are that you already aim high too, because it is usually the best students who struggle the most. Good students wrestle with their sentences because they care about finding the right expression. It takes them longer to find a good idea to write about because they know from experience that the first idea is rarely that great and good questions do not fall into their laps. They spend more time in the library to get a better overview of the literature, which leads to more reading, which means that they have to juggle more information. Having read more does not automatically mean having more ideas. Especially in the beginning, it means having fewer ideas to work with, because you know that others have already thought of most of them. That's great. Shall I go on? Okay, I do one more and then I pass. Good students also look beyond the obvious. They peek over the fences of their own disciplines, and once you have done that, you cannot go back and do what everyone else is doing, even if you now must deal with the heterogeneous ideas that come without a manual on how they might fit together. All that means is that a system is needed to keep track of the ever-increasing pool of information, which allows one to combine different ideas in an intelligent way with the aim of generating new ideas.
I've got a question, right? You know, he's talking about, you know, that come without a manual. And I go, this is like life, isn't it? There's no instruction manual for life. Is there an instruction manual for how to take a note or how to learn or how to build knowledge or how to become a better person? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Especially not if it's personalized. I mean, I can't tell you how to learn. I can't eat your food.
I mean, there are manuals out there by others, and I think that's the problem with, you know, taking pre-cooked approaches and pre-cooked solutions. If for instance, if you brought out the complete system on day one, I would have, you know, looked at it, maybe used it for a while, and then I might have moved to the next system because maybe there's a better one out there. I mean, it's nice, but maybe there's a better one out there. But if we digested the information in a book, or if we really worked on a system and put our blood and tears and sweat in it, and then we can make it our own. And I think it's the same with information. If I just, you know, copy paste what I did, of course, went through a Kindle book and copy pasted and copied way too much information, copied whole paragraphs. And at the end of the book, even if I looked at my highlights, I just had a small glimpse of what the book is about, but no real understanding.
How about people that haven't spoken up yet? Just unmute yourself if you want to just chime in. Just this idea of, you know, not having like an actual instruction manual of how to do any of this, how to learn, how to take notes, and then even if you do, it's so like what everyone's saying, it's so individualized, it's so personalized.
Hey everyone, it's Russell. So the biggest thing that kind of reminds me of that sort of thing is if you guys ever read the blog Wait But Why, Tim Urban, he has like this amazing article about like the cook versus the chef and kind of what that means. And it kind of compares like a cook that normally follows the you know, the ingredients, the list and what to do, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, and it's that and you're done. Like the chef, on the other hand, like knows the ingredients, knows everything about the kitchen front and back, and just like puts things into a pot and just like try to figure out what's next. It's very improvisational in that regard. And so when I think about like not having a plan for things, I always kind of like fall into this kind of like cook chef sort of scale of like, how much am I a cook in regards to like writing notes, or how much am I a chef in doing those kinds of things? For me, I found that to be like really helpful, like metaphorically speaking, as a way of like figuring out what am I like being more original on, or how much am I actually like following a sort of prescription or a guideline that others are like laying out.
Yeah, and
go ahead,
yep, sorry. Just to add on to that, I just wanted to, how I thought of it is like, you know, the difference of like, you know, if you think of it like from the, it's like your perspective. So like if you think of like a manual as being like something, I guess it's like a little bit of wording, but like it could be when you're thinking about like techniques and shortcuts. Whereas like, you know, things that don't have manuals, more like, I guess, in terms of life, it's more helpful to like know like the underlying principles and like the mental models. So something bigger that you can, and again, those can be applied to different contexts. So,
well, here's a specific example from my own personal life, right? One of my best friends, he's dealing with his daughter who's 11 years old and tried overdosing on pills a couple weeks ago. And I just found out about it, like driving over here. And so where do you, like, what's the instruction manual for that? You know? Because I mean, it's easy to listen to what other people have done, right? And it's maybe easy to find out experts, but, you know, it is still very individualized, right? It is still very idiosyncratic. It is still very much, what's the family dynamic like? What's the situation like? What is the daughter going through? What is the specific background and history? And I feel like there is no cookie cutter way of explaining it. So that, I don't know, I'm just sort of exploring these ideas. I like this idea of exploring things that we're on the edges of what we may know, you know, and hopefully as a group we can maybe build upon that.
I think you make a good point there, though, because, I mean, not to make a boxing reference, but Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until they get hit, right? So no matter how much you prepare, you don't know what you're going to do until you're in that circumstance. And like you said, there's no manual to tell you what to do for you. Because you can't react and emulate what somebody else does, because in that situation, you may not be able to perform that way.
So this reminds me of, hey, all, Mike here from San Francisco.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, y'all, glad to be here. First reading session I've been to in a hot minute. So this reminded me of something in if you study Japanese martial arts, if you study Japanese tea, things like that, you'll come across a concept called Mushin. And Mushin stands for roughly the no mind. And the best way to represent it as a symbol, if you've ever seen like a Buddhist statue, it's generally a woman with like a bunch of arms, and maybe she's holding like a bow or a sword, like a bunch of different weapons. You know, that's not a literal interpretation of something that actually exists in the material plane. There's no person with 1,000 arms holding all these weapons. What it is a symbol of how you behave when you've achieved the no mind state. So it's you're not trying to do anything, you just react. And when you're acting from a place of essentially mindlessness, every action that you take will be appropriate for the circumstance. So whether you need a sword or a bow or a spear, whatever you take up and do will be appropriate for the situation.
Can I ask this to the group? Can I ask just to pick just by a raise of hands? I mean, I'm looking at everyone's video right now. Have you felt that mindlessness in any of the guided writing exercises? And who hasn't? How about that? Who hasn't felt that yet? Eric.
Maybe me, Deb Hart. I don't know.
Hi, Deb.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the best way to equate that to a modern concept is the flow state. So Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, he essentially discovered, quote unquote, through science, what many of the ancient sages knew intuitively. And they codified this concept in systems of religion, philosophy, and teachings of that nature. And, you know, we found a way to make it sense for us in the modern age, but it's all describing more or less the same principle, that it's a state of infinite potentiality because you're not trying to do anything, you're just doing. And so as we're talking about life and is there a manual for it and what's right for me versus everyone else, this is the state that I am pursuing it's Mushin, it's no mind. It's the strategy of no strategy. And so life is ultimately, and under this paradigm, life is very simple. It's actually the urge to complicate it, overcomplicate it, that we have to fight against. And so I think I mentioned before on our weekend chat, how I've intentionally avoided trying to learn about Rome, because taking on anybody else's opinion of what Rome should be will pollute what Rome is for me. And so by occupying the space of not knowing anything, I'm doing what I need as I need to do it. And just trying to let that be enough.
Why do you think we complicate things? Because Sonke was going to talk about it in the book. He's going to talk about how there's studies about people that, you know, even though it's rather simple, people want to complicate it because they get a sort of hit from that. Why do you think we complicate things? Overcomplicate
To seem
things.
smart. To have like or at least some, you know, I tend to use a lot of like big words in conversation, and I've become like way more cognizant of that when like I'm living with my family right now. And after coming from college, I would throw them all these like big fancy phrases, and they're like, please dumb it down, like I can't speak to you. And that's been like a challenge for me, just to like think simply, because, you know, once we become so enriched in like all these different contexts and things, it tends to weigh you down because I don't know, there's so many different ways to explain things, and, you know, thinking simply like cuts through the meat of all that. And, you know, sometimes we don't want to like cut through it and just like reference the thing that it points to the simplicity.
I think sometimes you want to use complexity to validate if something's really simple or not. And I know that's true of me in my space sometimes. I mean, I have to validate that this conclusion that I've come to is correct by using a bunch of other complex processes to determine that, okay, yes, what you just determined that's very simple is actually accurate.
This is Chandu from San Diego. I just wanted to cross-refer because I did learn through the shared graph Feynman's technique. If you can't explain it simple, you didn't understand it well. And I'll use that as the starting point for why do we complicate things? It's probably because we don't understand it really well. And if we can't do that, and like helpful examples that I actually always go back to when I'm trying to learn something new, and like there is this amazing lady from NASA. She explains concepts of gravity and serious astronomical topics as a simple exercise of telling it to a 5-year-old, then somebody with like a high school diploma, and somebody with like a PhD level knowledge. But the transition that she's able to make is only possible because she actually understood what it is. And now she's able to communicate it without hiding behind the complexity. And that's, I think, is going back into the Japanese philosophy. I think that is Zen.
I got a question for everyone. What day is everyone on? I'm looking at the videos right now.
Yes.
Just with your hands. Day 10. Is everyone past day 10?
What's the final day?
Day 4. Okay.
Whatever today is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because this is the vibe that I'm getting right now, is that it's just so beautiful to watch, because it's like whether you know it or not, right? You've understood what fleeting notes are, and now you're exploring this idea of literature notes. And I know that because of what you're talking about. You wouldn't be talking about this unless you were sort of like understood what this part was. Because now you're thinking, okay, well, how am I supposed to explain this? What is this supposed to mean? Well, how can I explain this to someone simply? And so it's just a very interesting way to sort of look at everything right now. I'm just sort of just like, oh, this is very interesting. It's very interesting. Let's keep going. Who's next? Patrick, you want to pass? You want to keep going?
Go on with another one, Alan.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hey, good.
Hello.
Okay. Poor students do not have any of these problems as long as they stick within the boundaries of their discipline and read only as much as they're told to, or less. No serious external system is required, and writing can be done by sticking with the usual formula of how to write a scientific paper. In fact, poor students often feel more successful until they're tested, because they don't experience much self-doubt. In psychology, this is known as the Dunning-Kruger Effect. Poor students lack insight into their own limitations, as they would have to know about the vast amount of knowledge out there to be able to see how little they know in comparison. That means that those who are not very good at something tend to be overly confident, while those who have made an effort tend to underestimate their abilities. Poor students also have no trouble finding a question to write about. They neither lack opinions nor the confidence that they have already thought them through. They also won't have trouble finding confirming evidence in the literature, as they usually lack both interest and skill to detect and think through disconfirming facts and arguments.
What does this mean?
It reminds me of when I was actually at college, and the students who did the absolute minimum were completely unaware of the rich depth of information out there, and they thought they were geniuses. I see that quite a lot.
It reminds me of Twitter.
Mm.
How about everyone else?
That comes back around to experts too, though, because you work with some people, you associate with some people who've been in their field for so long that they think that there's no one else that could quite possibly share an idea with them that they haven't thought of. And so they're in that negative feedback loop of this effect too, I think.
Right. Everyone else who disagrees with them obviously doesn't know as much as they do.
And you can't grow at that point, right? You reach a point where you've reached as high as you're going to get intellectually when you're not open to any sort of feedback.
I think Sonke's doing this on purpose too, because this is supposed to. Like, it kind of stings. Because I was like, "Ooh, I've been in that situation." I'm not gonna admit it, but I've been in that situation.
Well, it also means that
I don't want to. I don't want to be a poor student. Yeah.
Oh, but if you are struggling, it could indicate that you may have more understanding than you previously anticipated.
This paragraph also makes me think about like street smarts versus book smarts, and kind of the idea that, like, you know how you meet some people and they just have incredible ability to be intuitive, and like their EQ is really high, they're really connective, they seem to just know things, like connections just sort of come for them. But then if you try and nail them down to something, get them to, like, I don't know, write a proposal, or I'm trying to think about my own career, because I'm this person that I'm talking about, like, hi, welcome, but then trying to nail down and actually, like, sit in front of a computer or do something can be, like, I find that really sometimes very difficult for me. But it's like, it's interesting because in here it talks about the phrase that I loved: they would have to know about the vast amount of knowledge out there to be able to see how little they know in comparison. Like, I guess I'm not this person in all regards. Don't hear me.
I think we're both. I think we're both. I think we're the poor student and the good student. Yeah,
blend.
yeah, we're a blend of both.
Like, then you think about the person who, when they're it's like they don't know what they don't know, and therefore what they do know comes across as so confident and so, like, they're so assured, and they don't have that self-doubt or the limiting belief or that little voice in the back of their head that's like, no, you're probably wrong, or thinking things through, or the anxiety about it, because they're like, they don't know what they don't know, and therefore they're really confident that what they think is right.
Don't know what we don't know.
Which reminds me of at age 21, and also, like, as an 18-year-old in the military, I mean, very early on having some sort of success, and then going into marketing and having some sort of success, but not really knowing, not really going deeper. When I landed in college, I thought, oh, it's going to be simple. I know the end goal is, like, to graduate with a good certificate and a good grade. And I think I wasted the entire 4 years just having the wrong goals in mind. And I mean, that's what that paragraph reminded me, is this: you could be a poor student with amazing grades. It's just that you've not internalized anything, and you are super confident, and you could relate all of these things, but you're still a poor student in that kind of.
And Shimon, what links back to that for me is then, like, when you go home at night, do you know that you're a poor student? Like, in the back of your head, is there that niggle of, like, Carminder, you're shaking your head like, no.
No. You believe you're
good.
too confident.
I have a perspective on that, where because the whole point of the paragraph
think
is
some of them know when they go home. I really do.
I don't think they do, because I don't think they have the wherewithal to know that. They're just literally, I don't know. I started a business when I was younger, and what I didn't know, if I were to do that now with that knowledge, I wouldn't do it. But back then, you almost have to use naivete as a skill or as a method of learning, right? And still be, as I tried to be as open as I could to learn kind of just in time as best as I could. And as a photographer, I'll say this: when I'm photographing faces, young faces, it's almost like I photograph their naivete, right? And you can see the look in their face. And then I photograph someone much, much older. We're talking, there's wrinkles, there's experience, there's life, there's grit. And you photograph that face, and it's way more interesting. There's a story there, there's experiences, right? And this is why models are young.
This is Chandra. As the discussion was going on, like it struck me. I have a 2.5-year-old, and like kids in general, I said, don't touch the fire, don't do this. Like when you put a structure in place, you're technically like, you know, stealing the self-experience for them, which probably, you know, is a good learning exercise on their own for them. Because you're coming with like, oh, this hurt me, and like, I don't want the child to go through this, and I have this structure, I'm not gonna do that because this is the measure that I have. I don't want to feel pain, I have my own needs. I think in a way, how this paragraph translates back to me with this context is, you can go down the path of structure, which will be limiting. It has its benefits. You will ace the exams, you'll get good grades, you will deliver what you need to do. But if you want to ask the question, whether is this what I want, then your whole belief system is going to be like, it needs a correction. That's what I'm taking out of that passage as of now.
Can I add there, Nikki from UK? Chandu, I completely agree with you about the helping the kids discover it for themselves. And I think that's what the gift that Bo's giving us, is that we're having to discover it ourselves rather than him just telling us the instructions. And I think Dr. K saying he doesn't want to take the kids to the emergency room. You have to learn and fail early. As someone already said, you know, actually you need to learn young, because then you're learning, and you learn by touching something lukewarm than that's really going to burn you or whatever. I've got two boys, they're 17 and 19, both gone through the education system. One is a complete academic, loves tests, works in school, great. The other one is completely, like, I'm sure he's dyslexic or ADHD or something, but he's completely the streetwise kid that Leah was talking about. And he's incredibly intelligent and can understand concepts, whereas my eldest one, who's very academic, can just pass tests. And it's hilarious hearing the two of them work together. Interestingly, the younger one, the one who's really streetwise, has a much higher fear of failure. So he is often taking risks, but actually is only taking baby steps all the time in a really measured way. Whereas the older one is so like, yeah, I can do this. He's just like, you know, completely like, oh, getting it wrong and stuff. And I think that's the kind of what we're talking about, isn't it?
Let me just piggyback off of that, because I'm loving this discussion. How well do your kids see themselves? Like, does the one that's taking these baby steps, even though he's taking massive risks, does he know that compared to the other one that is, I'm confident, you know what I mean? How well do we see ourselves when we think about it? I think the worst, just to circle back with everything here, I think we're the worst judges of ourselves sometimes.
Because we know everything that we've done wrong.
Yeah. And we don't know what we don't know.
So, okay, I'm getting chills. So, if a Zettelkasten is a communication partner, a dialogue partner, a reflection that's not distorted, then do you think, I'm just sort of setting it all up here, but I think you all already get the idea that I'm getting at, it's just very interesting. And it would just be very interesting if we were at the forefront of learning all of this, and, you know, I don't think it's a fluke that we've all come together.
Interesting
me
thought.
chills.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes me think, I mean, back to what we were talking about though, that pain of discovery and experience, I mean, as you progress throughout life is ultimately what's going to make you successful, right? It's going to be the sum totality of those experiences, not your ability to study or apply. I mean, not to get like geeky, but I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Soldier, right? You got Kurt Russell, who's kind of the older soldier, and you've got Jason Scott Lee, who's the younger soldier. And at the end of that fight, it wasn't the skills that were involved. It was the sum totality of experiences and failures that Kurt Russell had as a soldier that had allowed him to adapt, right? So I think for people who are stuck in that feedback loop of not wanting to get better, they'll reach a point in their life that they cannot go past and they won't understand why. And I think that's the sad thing.
Yeah, I don't know how much, I mean, this all reminds me of just fixed mindset, growth mindset. I read that book, or at least I skimmed most of it. And those are everyone's a little bit of a mix of both, but it's the people with the fixed mindset are trying to defend kind of who they were, or they've been told they were, or they are smart people, and they've been told that, and they're trying to protect that instead of going outside of that and learning new things and being wrong and growing through. I mean, that's kind of what I see as the bottom-up approach, is just kind of that process of figuring out where you're wrong. Top-down's much more fixed mindset, and you more like school type learning. Like, I wrote a lot about wicked environments and kind environments, which I think there are a lot of parallels to from the book Range. Sorry, that was just a.
Oh, but you're a good example of that, Stephen.
Brain
You
dump.
could have sat back and said nothing about, hey, where am I with my Zettelkasten? And should I be writing more? Should I be distilling more? But you didn't. You asked everybody, you got feedback, and Bo's like, you know what? You're right on track, right? So you're a perfect example of exactly what we're talking about.
I don't feel like I'm on track, but
that
yeah,
proves
I was a complete academic for all the way. I don't know for how long. I feel like this is one of the points in I've always tried to learn more, but this is a place where I've figured out that there's actually a different process for learning about different things in a different way. And you can't approach writing like you approach everything else. You can't approach thinking like you approach everything else. There's no manual for it, as we said before. So it's kind of I figured that out after I left college, and that's kind of going from the kind environment to the wicked environment of the real world, where problems aren't just a paragraph that you have to solve with an equation. It's things are messy, and there's not a manual for everything, and that's a hard lesson. If you were like me and were kind of that was something that you kind of prided yourself on, was being an academic, but most of my learning has come post college and post school, I guess.
Thank you, by the way, for just opening up and sharing with us. I think we're all just like, we're soaking in it, because you're speaking all of our stories, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
we all.
Well, I think
why
that
it's so
was, yeah.
everyone's just like, dude, he's like killing it right now.
Sorry,
it's like,
yeah.
he's pulling the blankets on all of us, and it's just, yeah. I think this is, yeah.
Does anyone else see parallels between, say, ego and hubris as themes when we talk about this stuff? Anyone else? I feel like I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that is the fixed mindset. That's your ego. You're like tied to this idea of how you have these great ideas and you have to protect them instead of,
letting yourself be a river instead of a reservoir.
Totally.
Ooh, that's good.
That's a tweet. That's a tweet I want to read. Shall we?
Do you want me to carry on with this one?
If you'd like, Elaine.
Why not? Good students, on the other hand, constantly raise the bar for themselves as they focus on what they haven't learned and mastered yet. This is why high achievers who've had a taste of the vast amount of knowledge out there are likely to suffer from what psychologists call imposter syndrome, the feeling that you're not really up to the job, even though, of all people, they are. This book is for you, the good students, ambitious academics, and curious non-fiction writers who understand that insight doesn't come easy and that writing is not only for proclaiming opinions, but the main tool to achieve insight worth sharing. I will pass over to the next person.
Michael Walsh. Thank you, Elaine.
Okay.
Michael Walsh.
Yes, I'm here. Chapter 1.1. We're really making progress, aren't we? Okay. There's no need to build a complex system, and there's no need to reorganize everything that you already have. You can start working and developing ideas immediately by taking smart notes. Complexity is an issue, though. Even if you don't aim to develop a grand theory and just want to keep track of what you read, organize your notes, and develop your thoughts, you will have to deal with an increasingly complex body of content, especially because it's not just about collecting thoughts, but about making connections and sparking new ideas. Most people try to reduce complexity by separating what they have into smaller stacks, piles, or separate folders. They sort their notes by topics and subtopics, which makes it look like less complex, but quickly becomes very complicated. Plus, it reduces the likelihood of building and finding surprising connections between the notes themselves, which means a trade-off between its usability and usefulness.
You know, Sonke would always say, you know, keep it as simple as possible. Keep it as simple as possible. The complexity will arise. And it's almost like, you know, even in life, it's like, you know, problems are going to happen in life. You know, I'm going to get a flat tire. A friend is going to get cancer. You know, like things are going to happen. And it's when it happens, you know, if I have less, like less complexity there is, then I can better deal with it when that arises. And he specifically said, what Rome is really good for is that when that complexity arises, when the need to figure out how to deal with this complexity, Rome is very good at that. And I really thought about that. And I was like, what does he mean by that? And it's just, I completely agree with him. If we can keep it as simple as possible, then when the complexity does arise, then it's like, yeah. Anyways.
Can I add a point here? Sorry, Michael, I see that you've got a thought and I want to hear it.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that where it notes like it looks more simplistic, but it actually becomes more complicated, but how focused we can sometimes get on how things look or the presentation of them. I think at one point in maybe a Sunday meeting, someone had talked about the person who has, you know, maybe a very lots on their desk, but they can tell you where everything is, comparatively to maybe someone who has everything beautifully stacked away, but that information perhaps isn't accessible to them. That's what this is thinking for me, because sometimes it can be tempting to want to make things look very beautiful, but that might not actually be the most effective.
I see a possible point where we're going, and that is the individual ideas themselves that we are recording. They should be as simple as possible. And where the complexity is in the connections and how one idea relates to another. I'm just making this up, but this sort of seems like where we're going.
Why? Into that, Michael.
Yeah.
Is that the whole point of a fleeting note then? To make it as simple as possible?
I think the fleeting note is just to give you something to work with to help you produce that simple idea, that permanent note that will stand on its own, and or maybe your fleeting note is, oh, idea one relates to idea 2. I need to make a note about that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me
Let's
ask
see.
you this. When you're capturing a fleeting note, how simple do you think that is?
Well, it's supposedly just to be a reminder, to give you enough of a start when you're processing it later on so that you can go on to the next step. But Bo, as you have said, we're not living in the 1960s anymore, where we may have jobs where we can actually just ponder questions like this all day, where a single word might be enough as a fleeting note. Now we're faced with so many distractions. Our fleeting notes may very well have to be more complicated to get us back into the mindset we were in when we had the aha moment.
Because, I mean, the reason I'm bringing this up is because the very first thought that went through my mind as you were talking about the simplicity of the fleeting notes and then the permanent note, or I think you said the connections being more complex. The thought that went through my mind was, I was thinking about the structure, all of it, all encompassing, being as simple as possible, and the complexity being as that knowledge base grows. And then what I was thinking about in regards to fleeting notes was, I was thinking that the actual idea of a fleeting note is massively complex because we don't know what it is. There's so many different layers behind it. And then what we're doing is we're putting it into this machine that it's like a function. It's like an f of x function, right? And it's like when you put it in this function, what happens is it outputs the most simple abstractions. And then that continues to build into it. So it starts complex, goes simple, adds simple, but then as you build these simple things, it starts becoming even more complex. I'm skirting on the edges of thinking about this.
So I haven't read the books. Yeah, I'm reading it with us, and I don't understand what the full concept of the Zettelkasten, other than it's a book and it had 3x5 cards and he wrote stuff down and da 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 da. But I think in this morning's prompt, you made us go and get something that we tagged as a fleeting note, and then worked out how that meant something to us today. And I think for me that was the learning by experience, effectively, that instead of you just telling me about a fleeting note, that I vaguely could remember a little bit about what I'd said and why, but not enough to be able to fully understand it in that moment this morning. And that's why I went, I don't know enough about this. But because I don't know what you're meant to do right now, whenever I'm trying to write a fleeting note, I'm trying to think about as if what my future self will need. So I'm trying to think about, how will I remember this in the future? And that's just from experience of the fact that I am hopeless and have failed miserably time and time and time again, thinking I've written myself something that my future self will understand, and then never been able to find it or understand it if I did find it again. And that's what I'm hoping learning this will change. Will it, Bo? Will it?
What I find beautiful about that exercise was Bo actually induced us to a failed fleeting note, right? It was a failure. Now we know we know what a bad one looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, so we learned by experience. So we effectively burnt our hand on the cooker to know, don't touch that again.
Yeah, that was the whole idea behind it. But yeah, I'm still thinking about the complexity simplicity thing. I think that's fascinating.
But that's the thing. I think that when it's simple, when you're trying to write it down, you have to think in that bigger picture, write down the bare minimum in that moment. But then when you come back to it, it's still the bare minimum, but it's tied to the bigger, because there's a load of other tied to notes. Is that not right? That's my limit.
I think to Nikki's point, though, I mean, I'm a power Anki user because of my job, right? I've been using it for a long time, and there's this whole scientist-based repetition, which everybody knows. But I think, to your question, if you're writing those things down, and you're interacting with your Zettelkasten, and even if you don't have, a stepped space repetition system that you're using, you're going to be seeing those notes over and over again. You're going to be interacting with those notes over and over again. So I think by default, you'll sort of have a space repetition loop built in, because the more you see it, the more you'll remember it, and then you'll internalize it so you won't forget.
And if it's not important enough, you won't need to see it anymore. No? Yeah?
Yeah, if it's not important enough, you won't be looking at it, and then you won't remember it, because maybe you don't need it.
Yeah. Whereas the things that are important and are connecting with other things will be coming back more and more.
Yeah, and then eventually, just thinking about it, kind of like a pseudo SRS, eventually you'll see it so much that when you look at it, you won't even have to read the rest of it, because it will already have transitioned into your long-term memory and you'll already know it.
That's what I'm hoping this is all about. That's why I'm here, to learn how to do it. So that's encouraging. Thanks, Alan.
And it works with other stuff. I mean, it's like how, I've learned Japanese. I mean, you read something, you see it, but you read Japanese websites, right? You read Japanese comic books, you read Japanese gaming sites, and you see the words that you learned in context so much that eventually you learn that word, right? Because you're seeing it constantly, because it's always in front of you.
I had this happen to me this morning while I was doing some writing. I'm beginning now to use Rome enough where I'm able to feel that I'm reaching for something I've already written. And so it's like, oh, I took notes on that book. Where is that? I remember I had this thought, like I was doing an atomic essay because I did ship 30 for 30. I feel like I wrote on this, and I'm starting to reach for things, and I'm finding either I have written on it and then I can grab it and pull it in, or maybe I haven't. Maybe it's like, well, I remember reading that, but I didn't write that down. Maybe I need to go back and revisit that. So, all I can say, Nikki, is that this is the experience that I seem to be having organically as I'm moving through this in my own journey in writing in Rome. I've also used SRS a lot as a foreign language learner, and can confirm that spaced repetition system.
Okay, yeah, I know what that is. That's the Anki Alan was talking about.
Yeah, Anki is the tool built on spaced repetition system theory. So SRS sort of exists independent of Anki. Anki is just the most commonly used, I think, tool that demonstrates the theory. So it is, it is starting to happen to me, where I'm feeling that sort of like intuitive reach for something that I have done, that I've written, that I've seen, that I've recorded. Just gotta trust the process and lean into the discomfort.
Yep. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Alan, your whole little spiel about like learning Anki or learning Japanese through Anki and spaced repetition, like it got me thinking a little bit about just like the whole concept of like building a Zettelkasten. And like I was like wondering, like, what if like this whole building this Zettelkasten is kind of like creating and learning our own language, where like the Zettelkasten is like we're all inputting kinds of things that we've been like exposed to over time, crystallizing it into like these small metrical units, and those units ends up being like our little alphabet, like a, I, we, o, kakiku, ke, ko. And then over time, like those little like fleeting notes become like an alphabet that you can like end up comprising all these complex thoughts. That's where like the simplicity leading to complexity comes from. That sort of like you get to know yourself well enough to the point where you are speaking your own self, kind of. That's the kind of thing that I'm starting to see, especially with you, Mike, because, once you do like start building your own alphabet over time, like that sort of repetition legitimizes the sense that this is what you're saying. And then like you become more familiar, like you're learning it. You're actually like living the sort of language that you're meant to speak almost.
No, I
very
agree
much different from other
100%,
people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very, very apt metaphor.
Because I think the way Bo's built the system, right? So, and Mike will tell you this too, with Anki, just real quick. I mean, typically if you use the standard timings, you review something once, you review something in 10 minutes, and you review something in a day, right? Now you can go in and you can change that. You can say, I want to review this in 2 hours, or I want to review this in 3 hours, if those timings aren't working for you. But Bo's essentially does that, because you have fleeting notes, which you're looking at. Then you have more notes that eventually you'll be looking at, which kind of gets you to the 10-minute mark. Then you have more notes that you're going to be looking at, which would get you past the 10-minute mark. And then you would review that stuff again in a day anyway, under normal SRS conditions. But with the system, now you're interacting with it more than you would a standard SRS, and you'll be interacting with it the next day. So by default, you're getting all that standard SRS absorption inside of the Zettelkasten because of how much you're interacting with your thoughts and your ideas. So that it gets to a point where you can't forget it. And if you do start to forget, you can probably read 2 or 3 things. You've got enough connections in your mind that it pulls it all back in, which is what my theory is. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but just looking at the way he's leading us, comparing it to SRS, that's what I think.
I want you all to watch this video back 6 weeks from now. Serious. Watch it back a year from now. It's yeah. Anyways, I needed a little I needed a little snack. I was just like falling. So yes. I don't know, Mike. Is it that one is simple, one is complex? I don't know. I like this idea of capturing complexity, breaking it down into simplicity or through simplicity, and then outputting it complex. Or maybe the accumulation of it becomes complex. I don't know.
This is why the language metaphor is so powerful for me, because I truly believe that the act of writing the fleeting note is thinking incarnate on the page. As you know, Feynman says, no, these aren't my notes. Like, this is my thinking. This is not paper with writing on it. This is my thinking. And it's so that's the translation from your brain to the page. But then there's another active translation to go from that fleeting note to whatever that nugget of knowledge is. That simple, concise statement of the complexity. But then the other thing, Bo, that I didn't want to get lost here is like, then you go from just yourself having the conversation with your own Zettelkasten, and then you enter this community. And that's like, right, that's when it becomes galactic or cosmic. I mean, I know we'll get there eventually, and that's why it's hard for me to wait. But that's kind of how I'm seeing all of this layering up and compounding, or that building of the complexity from simplicity.
Yeah, we'll keep going.
So before I go on, I've just been thinking, Bo, about what you said about the complexity, not necessarily being connections, but basically the accumulation. And I'm not sure that's really all that different. I think if you just had an accumulation of completely unrelated ideas, I wouldn't call that complex. I think it's both the connection between the ideas and the fact that the ideas accumulate over time, that somehow at one point or another you have something that is bigger than as a whole, bigger than just the sum of the parts.
But that presupposes that you don't have a trust in the system, no?
I'm trying to trust the system.
Well, but trying to trust it is different than actually having that trust. Because when you have the trust in the system, then you see that none of those connections are lost. It's the reliability, it's the dependability, it's the resiliency, it's the, okay, this is something that's, I get it. I understand that a Zettelkasten is going to do the remembering for me. But there's no way that you're going to know that until you get to the top of the mountain. Sorry. And hopefully, I can provide enough of enthusiastic passion, enough encouragement so you can get through that 3 to 6 months. That's all it takes.
But isn't it interesting that the patterns that reveal themselves in those connections leads back to simplicity? I don't know, maybe I'm making that up, but it feels like sometimes you see patterns overarching you see yourself, and that's in a way simple.
Yeah, my brain is like, feel like, like it's just like sparking everywhere. Shall we?
Thankfully, we don't have to choose between usability and usefulness. Quite the contrary, the best way to deal with complexity is to keep things as simple as possible and to follow a few basic principles. The simplicity of the structure allows complexity to build up where we want it on the content level. There is quite extensive empirical and logical research on this phenomenon. For an overview, see blah, blah, blah. Taking smart notes is as simple as it gets. Another item of good news regards the amount of time and effort you have to put into getting started. Even though you will change considerably the way you read, take notes, and write, there's almost no preparation time needed, except for understanding the principle and installing one or two free programs. It is not about redoing what you have done before, but about changing the way of working from now on. There's really no need to reorganize anything you have already done, that you already have. Just deal with things differently the moment you have to deal with them anyway. Continue. There's more good news. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. We only need to combine two well-known and proven ideas. The first idea lies at the heart of this book and is the technique of the simple slip box. I will explain the principle of this system in the next chapter, if we ever get to it, and show how it can be implemented in the everyday routines of students, academics, or nonfiction writers. Thankfully, there are digital versions for all major operating systems available. But if you prefer, you can also use pen and paper. In terms of productivity and ease, you will still easily surpass those who are taking not so smart notes. So I pass.
I do recommend, by the way, if you haven't read the book, I mean, feel like like we're going super slow through it, but I feel like that's because we're sort of diving into everything and discussing it. But yeah, if you haven't read the book, I do recommend reading the book all the way through. Do you want to keep going, Mike, or do you want to pass it?
I'll do one more, maybe.
Yeah.
The second idea is equally important. Even the best tool will not improve your productivity considerably if you don't change your daily routines the tool is embedded in. Just as the fastest car won't help you much if you don't have proper roads to drive it on. Like every change in behavior, a change in working habits means going through a phase where you are drawn back to your old ways. The new way of working might feel artificial at first and not necessarily like what you intuitively would do. That is normal. But as soon as you get used to taking smart notes, it will feel so much more natural that you will wonder how you were ever able to get anything done before. Routines require simple, repeatable tasks that can become automatic and fit together seamlessly. Citation. Only when all the related work becomes part of an overarching and interlocked process where all bottlenecks are removed can significant change take place, which is why none of the typical, quote, 10 mind-blowing tools to improve your productivity, close quote, tips that you can find all over the internet will ever be of much help. Okay, I'll pass now.
That's a lot. There's a lot there.
Yep.
Do y'all want to discuss, or shall we keep going?
Can I just say something, Nikki?
Yes.
I've tried the 10 mind-blowing tools to improve your productivity over and failed over and over and over again. And that's why I'm not trying to rush ahead with this and sticking with the process and trusting Bo and the way the system is designed to be able to just get in the habit of doing it, because I know when it gets hard, the habit will be my computer's going to schedule to go back to sleep. Don't sleep. Cancel. Sorry.
It's a theme today, Nikki. We're always two peas.
He says routines require simple, repeatable tasks that can become automatic and fit together seamlessly.
Like writing a fleeting note.
Guess what a literature note looks like? Looks like the same thing.
Is that why you?
Overarching-
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is that why you keep getting us to write the current time? So that's our routine already starting.
And there's this idea of, removing all the bottlenecks. I think if I had to put an overarching idea out there, I think it's just this idea of you never have to question where you are and what you're doing. Like, that's kind of like the goal. Say you're taking a note and the phone rings. You're in the middle of a fleeting note, the phone rings. It's your mom. You have to pick up the phone. You pick up the phone, you have a 30-minute conversation, you hang up. And you can go back and you have everything there and you know where you are. Whether in the fleeting notes phase, the literature notes phase, permanent notes phase, relevant notes. That's the goal.
Why do they have different names then? Sorry, that's probably a really stupid question, but not having read the book yet.
Well, fleeting notes is just the sort of capturing. Literature notes is what the author is saying, right? Reference note is just where the source material is, the evidence or the source. Permanent notes is the crystallized thought, the declarative statement. And then the relevant notes is what connects it. Connected notes or relevant notes is what connects it to the entire Zettelkasten.
That's brilliant. That makes sense. And I need to go back and write all that down, because in a fleeting note, maybe, I don't know, but that makes sense.
Hey, and no stupid questions, Nikki. You are among friends. Feel like you can ask anything you want. We're all here to help.
Thank you.
Love them. It helps me so much when you do. I was just thinking about muscle memory here. That's kind of where my brain went to, and how, like, a certain thing. Yeah, I saw those 2 thumbs up, Alan. I liked that. But when you learn something and you do it over, it's kind of the same idea as 10,000 hours of mastery, or whatever you kind of want to file it under. But basically, like, once you learn how to ride a bike, you don't forget. Once you learn how to swim, you don't forget. Thank you, Bo. But then it's the same thing. And I don't know about y'all, but I know for me, rhythm is a really important thing. Like, I do some of the dumbest stuff. When I go to bed at night, I take all the pillows off my bed, put my rice bag in the microwave. It's like me telling my brain, this is what we're doing now.
Current timestamp.
Exactly. So then there's these little things, current timestamp, the way that you write. I mean, I don't know them all. You can fill in all the blanks, but it becomes an elasticated thing that is very predictable. And when we think about bandwidth, like how much you actually have to give, you start with X amount and you use however much through your day. You have to think about, if I'm going to reasonably add this tool into my life, how much can I actually give to it, and how much is it going to take from me, and how much can I reduce the taking so that the interaction with it is more seamless and less effortful, but really effective. And when you kind of create some of that rote memory or muscle memory, you do those things and they don't cost you the energetic. So then you have all that energy left to put somewhere else.
I also think it's like
that makes no sense. I don't know.
No. This is what I heard you say, is that with that muscle memory, you're making less decisions.
Yes,
and every time you make one less decision, you alleviate the pressure of knowing where does this go? What do I need to do next? What's the next thing I need to do?
Yes.
And then I also want to add chills. Okay, we're talking about SRS, we're talking about Anki, right? And one of the fundamental, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the fundamental ideas behind Anki, or space repetition, is not knowing how it's going to come up, right? Exactly. And every time you add a new permanent note, you look at every other note that you've ever written. And because what you're doing is you're going, this is my experience at my favorite restaurant. This is my experience at my favorite restaurant with my mom. This is my experience at my favorite restaurant with my brother. This is my favorite time that I had with my brother. This is my favorite time I've ever had with my mom. And every time you're looking at all these, it's not notes, it's your experiences. Every time you do that, you're adding to it. So when people go, Bo, what is this Zettelkasten thing about? Like when I talk about that communication partner, it's not that it's just a note anymore. It's a living, breathing thing every time you add a new note. And then I also want to add one last thing, and that's how long do you think it takes, like not capturing the fleeting note, but how long do you think it takes to process fleeting literature permanent note into the Zettelkasten?
No idea.
Guess? On average, like I've streamlined my entire process, on average, it's about 15 minutes to 45 minutes to go from I'm going to start processing this fleeting note into a literature note, looking back at the source, adding it to the Zettelkasten, adding all the connections, right? And then I was really thinking about it, I was like, how long is a Pomodoro timer?
About 25 usually is a standard.
Something to think about. So it has a Pomodoro timer built in. It has SRS built in. Yeah, anyways.
Just to jump in real quick, but what Leah was talking about earlier, reminds me of the learning phases, where I think the last phase you reach is called the autonomous phase, where you're able to perform these things kind of autonomously without thinking about it, right? You leave work and you drive to work. You don't remember every turn that you made and all those things because now you know how to drive, and it frees you up to do so much more stuff. So what you're doing is once we get this down, we won't even think about the Zettelkasten. It'll just be second nature, and we'll be putting the ideas in and we won't have to worry about it because it'll be autonomous. Just like when we get up and we walk to the bathroom, we don't think walk 5 steps, turn this way, sit down. You've done it enough. You just know how to do it.
You ruined like day 26's lesson, man. Goodness.
You did it. You led me down this path. It's your fault.
But can you say that one more time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like us entering the autonomous phase, right? Once you enter the autonomous phase, you don't think anymore about doing that action. Like when you get in a car and you drive, you don't think about how you got to work. You just end up at work while your mind is thinking about all these other things. So by following the system and learning it, we'll be in the Zettelkasten, we'll understand how to do it. We won't have to think about the act of doing the Zettelkasten. We'll be able to think about other things while we're doing it, and then the thoughts will just come out and it'll be easier.
Yeah, Alan, to your point, it kind of reminds me a lot of what Josh was talking about with playing music. So he was having a little bit side conversation about learning piano for the first time. And I'd imagine it's very much like muscle memory where, when you're starting to get into the keys, the first thing you got to do, scales. What kind of scales you got to do? Got to have the way that your fingers can really navigate through the keys to the point where you don't have to think about it anymore. If you're going to play like a C major scale, it just comes up, you're good. And over time, that sort of complexity kind of like builds on it yourself. Now that you don't have to think about, oh, okay, I got to put my thumb on the C key and then my index finger on the D. Oh, okay, no, like that's gone. Like at time we're learning how to like play this instrument of Rome in a Zettelkasten kind of thing, where we reach like a certain level of fluency to having it be like jazz. Nikki, right, Nikki?
Yeah. I watched something on the telly and it talked about jazz follows rules, but then they go and break the rules, but only so far to be able to then come back in. And that's what makes it beautiful, and tension and, and all of that stuff. And that's what, yeah.
I wonder what you guys are all going to do with that extra time.
All
that extra time. All that extra time driving to work.
Does anyone drive to work anymore?
Walk down the hall.
That's pretty good.
Very interesting.
I'm learning how to drive at the moment, so alongside this, it's quite interesting.
That is actually a really cool thing, Geneva, because when you start driving, like I don't know if anybody else learned this when they learned to drive. I learned this thing called MISMs, so mirror, shoulder, signal, shoulder, move, which is like the way that you change lanes. So you consciously you look at your mirror, you shoulder check, you look at your mirror, you look over your shoulder, and then you move. And
that's cool.
Mirror, shoulder, signal, shoulder, move. But there are so many things when you learn how to drive that you have to consciously really push into your brain because it's such a new thing.
Yeah.
Driving is such a good sort of metaphor for all of this, because then once you've been driving, anyone in this chat could probably attest to, once you've been driving for 2 years, 3 years, you find yourself you drive with your freaking knee, you you're
wow. Keep going.
sandwich, you just do the dumbest things, and it's it's because you are so comfortable and you know your car, you know exactly how you can turn it. Like this thing that at one point seemed so foreign, like 4,000 tons of machinery that you're about to operate, but it becomes really manageable. And so I kind of hope, Bo, that actually maybe this becomes like that also.
Well, what if it was?
Yes, please.
What if it was, not just driving a car, but it was literally like how you think, how you learn. Like how big of a weight is that off of your shoulders?
Huge.
This is just what I've gotten out of it. You might not get that out of it, but this is what I've gotten out of it. This is where I've led other people to get out of it. I don't know. It's kind of crazy though. But if you look at all the evidence, it kind of lines up, and you're like, well, That feeling, indescribable. Never have to wonder where this goes anymore. Anytime I go into the Zettelkasten, it's like, whoa. I remember that. It's not even a note anymore. It's like, I remember that experience. Anyways. We're only on day 12, okay? Like, none of this is going to crystallize yet.
Do you think it's normal? Can I maybe ask a question? I'm going to ask it anyways, not can I maybe. Does anybody else feel, like, I guess for anyone who is really new to this, I feel a bit like, okay, day 12, like, am I dumb? Like, am I missing a bunch of things? Like, is everything that I don't know, like, is that a common thing for people to feel at this stage in the, like, I almost feel like I should be following like a 10-step checklist. Like, I'm never really sure, am I done? Am I not done? I don't know.
I think that's intentional, though.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You built it.
Yeah, I think it's intentional.
Like done with the guided writing exercise?
Like just
no, like I should be at this point by this time, kind of thing.
Oh, like some milestone.
Yeah.
Where's the peak? Where's the map? What's the trail? Where are the signs?
Where do I find gold stars? I would like some. You know.
Oh,
Where's the outline?
Okay. Well, think about this, okay? You're not going to get any of that until you hit a critical mass of permanent notes. And that's at least 80. You want to, like, critical mass is basically when you don't know when you start forgetting what these notes are. Or you forget that you wrote this note. Or you forget that you had that note. And if each note takes, let's say, 25 minutes times, let's just say 100. It's 2,500 minutes, right? What's 2,500 divided by 60, right? 41 hours. So 40 hours. That's what I said, right? 40 hours. But let me be specific. It's 40 hours of bombs could be going off around you. Focused Pomodoro. Don't talk to me. No distraction time. Well, I mean, you can have distractions. But you know what I mean? Written in your own words.
What's nice that you're alluding to is the constraints that we will be putting on ourselves as well. Because it's like you could take, instead of taking 40 hours, you could take 80 hours. But to what you said, Leah, sort of like, when are you done? Well, if you put the right constraints, you're done when you said you're going to be done. It's part of the trick here. But it's to guard us from going from 40 hours to 80 hours without actually quality.
Can I ask a question about that issue? Bo, it seems like we've been but we have touched on this issue of at what point will we start to have the Zettelkasten give back to us, and that's going to be a certain number of permanent notes. Maybe it's 80, maybe it's 100, maybe 125 or whatever. And for that to work, I think we have to regularly review our permanent notes. And if it's 80 or 100, no big deal. But what happens when we get to 500 or 1,000? I mean, Lumen had apparently like 70,000 by the time there's no way that he regularly looked through his entire slip box. How there must be a way that you've figured out that Rome will help us surface the right stuff at the right time.
That's what I was talking about with simplicity and complexity.
Okay.
The complexity of that will arise. And with Rome, you can figure that out. What happens when a page gets too big and it takes too long to load? You just create a new page. You drag all the blocks, you put it in that new page. You have an index that tells you what's inside that page. And then you have 6 of these pages that have 100 of these notes, and you put that back into another Zettelkasten, where you have a little structure there. That's what I was talking about, complexity.
I'm mind blown.
I think it doesn't help, Geneva, that it's very late for us.
What happened? What
It
happened?
is. I was like, pardon?
What happened?
Our mind blew.
Why?
Because you were like pages in pages and pages. And I was like, what pages in pages and index? What?
I'm with her.
I'm confused. What happened? Why was your mind blown, Nikki?
Because you said what happens when you run out of a page, like, and then you make another page, and then you bring your pages into pages, and I was just lost at the what you can grow out of pages? What?
Yeah.
You lost me there. Hello.
This is a good thing, though.
Good. I'm trusting you,
Okay.
Bo.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. What are you thinking, Geneva?
This is my, yeah, exactly. It's 23:18.
Yeah. Listen, there's so much here. It's beautiful. Yes.
I think like Geneva / Nikki, I maybe feel like related to it because I think that when you are first learning Rome, there are a lot of people who understand the lingo of like the hyperlinking and even just the use of like Pomodoro timer. Like there's a language that comes with it. And if you don't fully know the actual use of the language, like you don't quite speak it, then you get kind of lost on it and you're not actually like, I think Bo, if I'm correct, when you talk about linking pages, like pages and pages and pages, there literally could be like, you know how when you click onto like your name and then you click onto the next point and then onto the next point, the idea is that you could have everything kind of hyperlinked and webbed. But I can totally understand that if like when you're confused about the lingo that you're using, it's kind of like, what the actual fuck? How are you doing this? You know, and from the outside looking in, like even when I try
complexity. I get it. Okay, I got it. Got it.
Like when I'm trying to explain what I'm doing or why, you know, why I've made my life fit around this book club and stuff, and I'm trying to explain like what actually am I going to do with this? I run into like I don't know how to explain it. I just know that I want to understand it, that I want to think more clearly. And when I show people, like physically take my computer, show them my personal page, and I'm like, this is how you can use the parts of it that I know how to use, they're like, oh, I get it. And they see it. But to try and explain it to them, even when I try to explain it, I'm like, what? So I feel like it almost becomes like overwhelming because it's so complex, but then it's also so simple. But I don't think you realize how simple it is until you actually understand it.
Fuck, you're ruining my...
I'm sorry.
That's like ruining day 15. Okay.
We'll need it again. We'll need it again. We need
just remember that idea, though. Remember that idea, though. Okay? Massive amounts of complexity hidden behind simplicity. Okay?
But isn't that like riding a bike?
Yes, explain how if you're gonna teach me how to ride a bicycle, right? I never rode a bicycle in my life. Teach me how to ride a bicycle. What's the hardest part? The balance. How do you explain balance? This is what I'm doing to you. I don't trusting in a note-taking system?
Just pedal. Just pedal.
Yes. Jeez, so much going on right now, and just hold on. Like I said, like
I'm like really curious about what's going on in Russell's brain over there.
I'm gonna. Did you guys see that link? Did you see that video of that YouTube clip?
Oh, that was a clutch share. Yeah,
History of
thank you,
Rome?
whoever shared that.
Yeah, the one that I posted the other day or
Yeah.
yesterday. That's the one to send to everybody. It's so good. It's on the shared graph. I can't find the link.
It's
I'll
in the
find
chat
the link
room.
later.
It's in the chat room.
It's in the chat room.
Chat room.
Yeah. It's just a simple 5-minute video that Austin made, and it's just a great explanation just to give to like normies.
I'm a normie.
Me too.
I am a
Me too.
Do we get shirts? Then we can wear them here, and then people will know. Not me.
Shall we continue?
Oh goodness. Wait, before we continue, Leah, why did you ask?
Just because you had like such a like you and Bo seemed like you were right on the same page of like, you know, when you see someone and they know something you don't quite know yet, and they're like, I can't even tell you it because it's like they're planning a surprise party and you're talking about how you would love a surprise party and they know that there's one planned for you but you don't know it yet. That was the look on your face.
What a description.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. That reminds me, I need new friends who are throwing me surprise parties. I'm doing something wrong.
It's gonna be balloons with dollar bills in it.
You send me your address, I'll hook you up.
All right.
Good at a surprise party.
Okay. Shall we? Who's up? Russell. Where you at?
Right, we're still reading. My goodness.
Yeah. This is a book club, isn't it?
I think so. Sometimes I think it is.
It's not.
Oh my goodness, bro. All right. So, the importance of an overarching workflow is the great insight of David Allen's Getting Things Done. There are few serious knowledge workers left who haven't heard of GTD, and that is for a good reason. It works. The principle of GTD is to collect everything that needs to be taken care of in one place and process it in a standardized way. This doesn't necessarily mean that we actually do everything we once intended to do, but it forces us to make clear choices and regularly check if our tasks still fit into the bigger picture. Only if we know that everything is taken care of, from the important to the trivial, can we let go and focus on what is right in front of us. Only if nothing else is lingering in our working memory and taking up valuable mental resources can we experience what Allen calls a mind like water. The state where we can focus on the work right in front of us without getting distracted by competing thoughts. The principle is simple but holistic. It is not a quick fix or a fancy tool. It doesn't do the work for you. But it does provide a structure for our everyday work that deals with the fact that most distractions do not come so much from our environment, but our own minds. Oh,
what does that mean? What does that mean? Distractions do not come so much from our environment, but our own minds.
Well, I can give you an example. While reading this paragraph, I had so much competing side thoughts that I really had to like really pay attention to the letters and the words. all the side conversation that's been going on, like it's got my mind buzzing, but like I can't read while all this stuff is going on. Like I need a place to put it.
And I also was reminded by a quote that the distraction is actually not what comes from the outside. Distraction is what goes on after we've been triggered. So an example is, for instance, I get a ping or a prompt that I got a mail. So that distraction isn't the real distraction because that comes up for a second. But then my mind starts running. Is this an important mail? Do I need to react now? And this the real distraction is what happens in my mind that gets triggered by the external thing. So I think that's what he's talking about.
It's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, or sometimes like you're reading something and then it sparks you to think about something else. Like when I was writing, it sparked me to think about something else that was sort of related to the writing, that wasn't related to the writing. And then I'm like, well, do I stop writing now that I'm kind of in this flow and I've got these ideas, but what if I don't write down this other thing? So then your brain's kind of competing for what's important, at least for me.
Yeah, me too.
I think he may be saying that you don't really want to be doing this work. And so your mind is trying to trick you into doing something else instead. And his system is so simple, albeit flawed, if I read the next paragraph right, but his system is so simple that you can get by those distractions, that the next step is easy to do because it's such a small step. You can keep going and you can ignore the fact that your mind is trying to get you to do something else.
You're talking about GTD, right?
I did it many years ago, and it works for some things, but it sort of loses the big picture.
What if your life would be at risk at a particular moment?
Hello.
And would GTD help you? What would be your next action to save your life?
How do you mean? Say that again?
I mean, GTD is, for me, it's kind of urgency. You know, you need to focus on something which is important, or maybe not so important, but which is at stake, and there's a challenge to overcome. And I'm taking this extreme example of having your life at risk, and would this mindset help you to take the right next action? So you have to focus on something and put away, you know, the noise which is around you, and that means focus on something which is life-saving. I mean, GTD, I'm not really GTD, you know, minded, but I think maybe that's something he meant by saying that, putting it at the extreme level. I mean, I'm taking it for purpose, this extreme situation. Maybe it doesn't make sense to you, but
No. Taking it to that extreme because it induces action.
On my notebook, you know.
Yeah.
There's a quote. Sorry.
Go ahead.
There's a quote by Robert Brault, and it says, "We are kept from our goal not by obstacles, but clearer path to lesser goals." And it's like, if what we're trying to do, if we're doing the work and that's hard, then we will always go and find something easier for our mental mindset to do. And I think, based on what, he's gone. Where's he gone? The chap, Daniel. Said, you know, it's like, if my life depends on it, that's my main goal, and there is nothing that's going to get in the way of that, and that becomes the single focus, isn't it, in that moment? But actually, when it's like doing something like processing a note, there'll be a gazillion other things that will be easier, that my mind will be drawn to, because they're not because they're not important goals, or obstacles, but it's to get to that outcome is a lot easier and simpler and clearer than it is to actually do the work of processing.
Approach, processing notes could be life-saving.
What if it was this too? Well, let me put those two ideas together, and Sonke is going to talk about this in the book later, but it's almost like hammock time. It's like, what if life-saving, yes, sense of urgency, yes, but what if it was important, but it wasn't urgent, and you were doing it because you wanted to do it? And so when you're sitting down to take a note or to add a new permanent note, it's because you want to do it.
That's about will.
Yeah. And then it's like you're enjoying it, you know? And it's almost like what Lumen was talking about. It's like, if he didn't want to do it, he didn't do it. Same thing with me. It's like, sometimes I'll just go through seasons of just capturing. And other times I'll go through these big seasons of processing. So it's thinking about that and go, well, I could have the sort of gun to my head, I got to get it done. That's one way of working. And there's also, I could do it the other way, where it's like, I kind of really want to. I really, really want to. And the enjoyment and fulfillment from that, maybe?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Bo, because it's like, even if you love doing something, you have to take a break. Like if you love Dance Dance Revolution, that's great. But then if somebody says now Dance Dance Revolution for 20 hours, at the end of 20 hours, you're going to hate it. So I love your approach that you do it, you give yourself a break. It's something that you love. You go away, and then you kind of reward yourself by coming back to doing that thing that you love instead of turning what you're trying to do into a job that you'll hate.
So how
everything has seasons, doesn't it?
Exactly. So my question is this, right? Thinking about all the work that we've been doing over this last week, when you're capturing a fleeting note, maybe we're not going to go back to this the next day. When we're capturing this fleeting idea, maybe we won't go back to this for a week, 2 weeks. And so what do we need to have there so when we do process it, because it's 2 steps. Capturing is 1 step, processing is the other step. When we are in the mood or when we want to, we're feeling like, hey, I want to work on a permanent note. What's the information that we need there so we have enough here to work with? And yesterday's lesson was to show you this is not enough, hopefully.
It kind of makes me think of when you were talking about earlier when Lumen would just spend a day just ruminating through his own thoughts and then having all of that crystallize into a single word. Like maybe that word acts as a pointer to all of the work and the knowledge that we had done in preparation of compressing all of that into that one word. And that is the context that we need.
Explain
sometimes
that.
Like
Elaborate on that.
when I've gone through like the past notes, I remember when I look back at it, if I put in enough of the work, I can kind of replay that sort of thinking that I did in my own head and the associated emotions and the background that was going in my own mind in putting all those things together. Because I wrote in my own notes, like, if you put yourself enough into it, then it will be, then you already have what it takes to like get to that certain like conclusion. And then once you've done that, then, oh wow, I really am at the edge of my knowledge, my goodness.
Yes, keep going.
Then once that's there, you can basically encapsulate all that information back at like the top of that bullet, so that if you do have that, if you do reference that again, then you can, you know that that's there, and you also have like the stack of where everything came from that brought you to that single like phrase or, you know, permanent note, if that what you will. Yeah, I it's probably not like if anyone, that's where I'm at right now in terms of thinking about that.
Let me also add the idea of time that it takes you from like however long it takes you, whether it's the next day or next week or next month, when you go from after you capture that to when you start processing it, you're going to be a different person, aren't you?
Right.
So the system, what I hear you saying is that the system must be flexible enough to, whether you get back to it a week later or a month later or the day later, the system, the structure, the Zettelkasten must be flexible enough to receive when and where you process that. Correct? Think about this, okay?
Yeah.
You have a fleeting note. You're reading, something stands out to you. You capture that fleeting note, right? And then you just let it go, GTD, right? You capture it, you let it go. And then when you go back to this, whether you go back to this captured fleeting note to process this from fleeting literature to permanent note, whether that's 1 day from now or whether it's 2 months from now, the system, or where all these notes are going to live, must be flexible enough that if you processed it tomorrow, you're going to be a different person than you are tomorrow than you are 2 months from now. All the ideas and knowledge and thinking, right? This is super complex, but this is what I'm talking about, hiding the complexity and the simplicity. So the system, the structure must be flexible enough that if you processed it tomorrow and you added this new permanent note, or whether you added this new permanent note 2 months from now, it would still be able to receive that. I just don't just you're not. This isn't going to make sense, but I just want you to start thinking about that. Okay.
So it's kind of like when you have like a thought, and like in Rome, you have like all these like nested bulleted points, right? Like you can reread through that entire set of bullet points, and then if you do want to process it, you can like stop at a certain bullet, and then continue that processing in like on another like little side bullet associated with it, and then continue it from there. Kind of
Think about it like this. Think about it like this. Think about it like this. When you go to a Denny's, when you go to Denny's, the Denny's restaurant, right? If you go to Denny's, it's probably not the best example. If you go to Denny's at 6 in the afternoon or 6 at night, and you order a pancake, you'll get a pancake the same way as if you went at 3 in the morning, right? And so basically, you can trust that when you go to Denny's and you order a pancake, it's kind of basically going to be the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can trust that Denny's, if I order a pancake, I'll typically get the same thing. Wouldn't you want that same sort of trust with your note-taking system? That whether you put this note now or you put this note as a different person 2 months from now, that it's still going to get you the same. It's still going to get you the same nourishment.
Flavor.
Hmm?
Flavor.
Yes.
It should if we're following the process.
It's super complex. I just want you to think about that, because a lot of times systems are about you follow this A, B, C step, and then you put it here, 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 here. But if you're a different person, then listen, we're not the same people we were yesterday. Like we're always learning and growing as people. And so if you go back to this captured fleeting note a month later and you're a different person, will the Zettelkasten be able to receive this note? Because the processing is the actual slowing down that idea. The processing is actually when you add it to the Zettelkasten. When you capture it, all you're doing is just capturing enough so when you do go back to it.
Bo, I found that quote because I put it in Rome. And I knew I could remember lesser goals. That's all I could remember was lesser goals. And I put in the search bar lesser goals and I found the quote. And what you were saying about is it the same person tomorrow or yesterday or whatever, is because as long as I know where I can put lesser goals, it will still be the same as when I left it. And that's what you meant about coming back to it whenever you want to, it always being there and it being trustworthy. So, but I could process a bit of it today, go off, have a week off or something, come back to the same note and pick it up where I left off, because I know enough to know the lesser goals. But I haven't done any work in it, and I haven't done any defining of it of any kind of fleeting or whatever them notes, because you've only just told me what they are. But that's what you mean, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I got that.
The idea that the visualization that I have is capture enough of what you need in amber, right? So it's crystallized and it's in amber. You captured this fleeting note. You capture enough where it's in amber. So if you go back to this at any time, you're going to understand why this thing stood out to you.
So I knew who I heard it from. So I was like, okay, I know it's Benjamin Hardy, and I knew it had something to do with lesser goals, and it sounded like it had a br, and that's all I knew. But that was enough for me to go back and find it, and that's without any deep processing in it. But that was when I put it in. I tagged it with Benjamin Hardy, and I tagged it with an interesting quote.
Just wait. Your mind's gonna get fucking blown.
So that I understand how that can work. If you can relate it to something else. But I don't know about all of you, but there are there are a lot of times when I'm looking at something and I'm writing something down, and I say, okay, I'll remember the rest. I'll remember where I was, and then in 2 days, I don't remember at all. Where you seem to be going, Bo, is more fleeting note stage. You really need to maybe empty your head of the things that you were feeling and thinking, so that, well, tomorrow you may not need all that stuff, but if you don't get to it until 2 weeks or 2 months from now, you will have everything that you had at the moment when you wrote the fleeting note. And so you've got to empty your head of all the things that you were thinking that brought you to that aha moment.
Yes. Now here's a question. When you say empty, right? If is it easier to empty a paragraph, or is it easier to empty the exact point? Like the exact 5 or 6 words, or that exact sentence of the paragraph?
I would think the latter.
Yeah. Because the paragraph is just too much. Like if I wanted to dump all that, then it's like, where do I go? It could go anywhere.
Well, the paragraph, you have to start thinking about structure and all that stuff.
Yes. And we're not, and I'll plant this seed now, we're not respecting the author and what the author had to do in order to create the word that made up the sentence, that made up the sentences, that made up the paragraph. Every piece of that paragraph, the author took time. And it would be disrespectful, like it could take lifetimes to write a book. And it would be disrespectful to go, I know what the author is saying from the whole paragraph. Because we don't know how long that author took to formulate that, to edit that, to how many drafts did they go through. And so it's the moment that we get to that point where it clicks, and then we stop that, we capture that, we dump it all out, and we capture enough where it's like, oh, I'm done. I don't want to break my flow state so I can keep reading. And then when you go back to it, you have enough. Oh, you guys all got it. This is fucking amazing.
Have to think about this.
Think about it. Think about what part of it. What do you got? What is everyone thinking?
Well, what you said makes me think about Russell said, which is Russell was describing how he was doing it, but he had like this emotional connection to it, right? He put so much stuff into it that when he started reading it, it's like his emotions triggered him remembering it. And so maybe that's part of the process too. The more emotions we put, like you remember someone who's a jerk, right? It only takes once. You never forget that person. You never forget the circumstance that happened. Somebody stabs you in the back. You don't forget it. You remember it. You don't have to try because there is an emotional involvement. So if we're emotionally involved and we're putting these things in our notes, we look at it and we see it, then it'll come back to us because we have an emotional connected to it, not just like an academic connection.
What were we doing in week 1?
Airing our goddamn souls out.
What type of writing were we doing in week 1?
Self-therapy.
What was the structure like?
Painful.
I'm just creating habits. This is very interesting. I'm very excited for you all.
Man, Bo, this is the 4th time that you're going through this book club, right?
No.
What would you?
RBC 2, RBC 3, RBC 4, 3rd time.
So 3rd time, gotcha. Yeah. How are we doing? Or like, what's the thing that is different amongst the other 2 book clubs that you've seen?
I don't have to convince you that it works. A lot of you have already come into it knowing that it works. RBC 2 was literally me defending against every attack of you're not qualified, you don't know what you're talking about. RBC 3 was like the litmus test. And you all are just like, I told RBC 3, I was like, there's an alumni graph, right? And I told them, it's like, oh, they're crushing you guys. But that's because I don't have to spend the first week and a half just convincing you like, crazy dude yelling at you is actually gonna guide you somewhere. And so we skipped a lot of the emotional stuff that we had to get through. But I think it's okay because there's less, you're getting more of these details. Like what I realized was like, I really need to touch upon why you can't capture the whole paragraph. But I didn't touch upon that in RBC3 because I was getting all of the emotional, let's just write in Rome and have that emotional attachment to actually processing fleeting notes and literature notes. And so because I don't have to do that as much, I can focus on giving you more of the nitty gritty, of the finer details, of the complexities. So that would be the biggest difference.
Not to mention totally different community.
Yeah, it's a totally good. Yeah, and plus it's like I'm not literally. I haven't used any of the like. You know, Matt McKinley said something very funny. He's like, you know, Bo, you're either a genius or an idiot because everyone else. Oh, listen to me, because everyone else goes. I'm gonna figure out a course or a structure, right? And I'm just gonna once I figure it out and it works, I'm just gonna copy paste it. And like, Bo, what you're doing is you're saying, yeah, I've got all that, but you're doing you're starting from scratch every day. And that's literally what I'm doing. And how I do it is I basically put myself through the guided writing exercise, and then I go, okay, I think I know what needs to happen next. And then it's feedback from these reading rooms and the Twitter and the chats and all that, and then I just sort of structure it along. So it's very, it's a work of art. You know the imagery that I like to put it like? It's like, it's the figure skater, it's the ice skaters, where it's not about the technical stuff, it's about skirting on the edge of complete disaster. And so last night I was literally in the office at like 5 and last night was probably the hardest night of my life. 4 hours of sleep the night before, right? Inner intellect, and then I come in and I didn't get out till 3 o'clock really, but I was just exhausted, right? And it was just so different because it wasn't like exhausted like I was at work. It was different. You know, it was just like literally just like physically my body is not. But it's literally that skating on the edge of complete disaster. And it's if you can nail the triple Lutz and you've never done it before and you do, that's what it feels like. And a perfect example of that is like, what is it, day 11? When I found out that my niece was watching videos. And I was like, well, shit, now I gotta fucking make a video with my niece. And then I had to put all that together. And it was just like, oh, well, top-down structure. Let's talk about that. Okay, put that together. And so that's kind of like what it's like. That's what you're getting.
I love what you did, Bo, because, you know, it's like scientific research, right? Like if somebody robs a house and there's an eyewitness, right? We put so much testimony in the eyewitness, right? Because this person claims they saw it. But in scientific research, you find something, you discover it. They don't put trust in what you discovered. You release it and you say, okay, here's what I found. Here's what happened. And the scientific community gets together and tries to confirm if what you did was accurate. Try and break this. And that's what you did with the Zettelcast. And you said, hey, I have this thing. I've discovered it, but don't put faith in me. I'm going to put it out there. Look at it, spin it around, try and break it. And that hasn't happened. And I think that's why it's kind of reaching this critical mass, because I asked myself, this is going to get to the point where it's just not going to scale. There's going to be too many people that hear about this from different locations that want to come in. And it's like, how do you scale that in a book club? Because it's continuing to grow.
Interesting that you raised a perfect example of a top-down system. That, you know, when someone is trying to, prove or disprove someone else's theory or whatever, that's where they start with a conclusion and then they look for confirmatory or falsifying evidence.
And I think
thinking
that's
about
what
that question
happened with
of
Bo.
scale.
People were coming at it, trying to disprove it, right? Trying to look at it, and then he didn't have to defend it. All he had to do, like he said, was, here's my system. Take a look at it, try and break it, here it is. And you got where you are now because people tried that and they did that and they failed. And now it's reaching critical mass.
Or they tried it, they tried it, they failed, and they're like, it works.
I have not tried it yet.
I don't know why it works, dude. I'm too dumb for this shit. You know, well, don't get me wrong. I am smart. I'm wicked smart, right? Just because I didn't go to school doesn't mean I'm not wicked smart, you know. But yeah,
I have not tried it yet, but I'm here, still confident.
I think doing the work is important, though. I think doing the writing is important. I think doing the exercise is important, because that's why it's like you've got to give me 100% in order to get all of it. I feel like that's been the biggest thing. Like when people like graduate RBC3, they were just talking about how like you had to do all the work because it all sort of like added and layered on top of it.
I'm a dropout from RBC3.
Yeah.
I tried. I lapsed one day. I was like, oh, I'll come back, and then I was like, oh well, I've missed 4 days. I need to like block out 4 hours. The biggest change for me, and I don't know if it was you, Bo, or what, but it's like the only thing I need to do is the current time, and then the rest just like takes care of it. I don't. It's just like I do that, and then I complete the exercise. So as a dropout from RBC3, I can say that like it is really about just showing up to the screen, adding the current time, and just starting to type. Sometimes I'm only there for 10 minutes. Sometimes I'm there for 2 hours. But I've been able to do it every single day, and that's been the biggest difference for me, and why I didn't stick with it beforehand.
Well, we're glad you're here, Chad.
Yeah. You probably
That
looked
was way
out
cooler
better
than
anyways.
RBC3 anyways.
Yeah, yeah. RBC3 got like, every iteration gets better and better, I feel like. I'm learning more, and then everything I incorporate, everything I learn from the group, I reincorporate it back into, RBC5's waiting list is going to come out next week. So it's just like, I know what I'm doing for the summer.
But what I didn't realize last time was how fun it is. Yeah, it's painful. Yeah, it's whatever. But that's had a sort of dopamine hit of going back and actually doing something each day and accomplishing it. And it's actually super fun. I wish I had known that last time. Probably would have done it.
I'm enjoying writing. Like, I'm enjoying the feel of my fingers on my laptop, and I'm enjoying opening the screen and it just being clean, and just taking in all of that, appreciating that as I go. And this is someone who I've had believed the lie that I can't write, and that I don't write, and that I shouldn't be writing, and other people are better than writing than me. So this is just amazing. And I think, Bo, thank you again. I know I said it before, but thank you, because you're making it easy for me to enjoy the bits that I can enjoy today, and to trust you in the process, and to know that I will get the bits I need to get at the right time. And I feel like I am a child learning to ride a bike, and you are holding my saddle while I'm literally on the road. So thank you very much. And you all guys are all here too, holding too, and yay.
Yeah.
I
love your energy, Nikki. Yeah. God, especially being at midnight and everything. My goodness.
Yeah, delirious now. Sorry.
No, but it's definitely the community, though. It's the community that pushes you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nikki and I have kind of sidebar chatted about this, just about the feeling of this book club, and specifically the Thursdays that are just a bit more intimate, and how it's like there is something really so special about what everyone contributes to it, and just feeling really understood, and feeling like you're really actually quite safe to explore ideas. And that also happens in the bigger kind of Sunday room as well. But you can sometimes feel a little bit like, whoa, I can't keep up with all these really incredibly smart people. Like, am I smart enough to be here? But then when you dial it in and you kind of just, Chad, like you were saying, just show up and pull up in the page, and just like some of you have heard me talk about Michael Barr, who introduced me to Rome, who is an incredible human.
He's amazing.
I know, he's so wonderful. I always meet with Michael on Friday mornings, and I take my Rome week, and then I'm like, oh my God, my brain is exploding. But like, there's something, he always tells me, like, show up, give a shit, be accountable. And those are like the three things that just really, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. If you do those three things, like, you're going to get something out of it. And so with this, it's really cool to me that even just in the community, it's like, even if you're not the smartest person here, if you show up, you give a shit, and you be accountable, everyone's going to feel that from you, and you're going to feel like you're contributing because you're actually part of it.
There's a European room that I could go to that would be far, more convenient. But I want you guys. Like, I've really connected with all of you guys, and it's just brilliant. So yeah, it's nearly midnight, and I'm still here. And Joshua feels the same because it's nearly 1 where he is, and he's
Sorry.
still.
It's 1 o'clock in Brussels,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's
1 o'clock in
1
the
here.
morning.
1
So,
in the morning.
I mean 1 a.m.
Let's do this.
Oh, man.
I do want to wrap it up. I want to be mindful of the time. We started at 4:30, 5:30, 6:30. Yeah, so we're going on 2.5 hours here. Let me just ask this: what are you struggling with right now specifically? What are you having difficulty grasping? What are you sort of wrestling with? What are some ideas and concepts, especially with fleeting notes? Maybe even leading into literature notes, or maybe how things are starting to like layer on top of it. What are you dealing with?
I think I still have to get better at being able to summarize. Right, we went through the one exercise of kind of summarizing the things below, and I think my summaries get a little bit too long. Like, I had to redo one several times because I'm like, now it's not a summary, now it's like, summary the movie, and then I'm saying it a different way, and now it's something else. So I have to get better at how do I take all that information and summarize it to encapsulate it all. Still kind of struggling with that. I know I'll get there. I know it's a process, but it's kind of what I'm working through.
I'm gonna write notes just so I can.
I think summarizing is an art. It really is, but it's something that you can learn.
Yeah, and I found this exercise today, day 12, very good for this, because it was a summary, which even after 2 days, I felt incomplete, because I was looking at the 100 character sentence, and I thought, what did I mean about these 2 words, And therefore I knew that the summary wasn't good enough. So I needed to recreate my thought process here. And so I think that's a good thing, that if you come back after 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 days, and you lost some of the context, and if your summary doesn't give it to you, you have to rework it.
What else? What else is everyone else struggling with? What else do you have questions about? Because by the way, yeah, that's what I want. Ask what. I guess we kind of already did that, but what questions do you have? Because by the questions you ask, I'll know where you are.
I just really want to know how everyone changes their bullet points to be different colors.
Something to do with CSS, Leah, but I don't know.
I can't figure that out. Everyone else has these gorgeous colors. I have plain, boring black.
I'm with you. Please show us.
You do know that the reason that the bullet points are black for you is because you're logged on and you can only see your bullet points.
I don't know that, though. I didn't know
And
that.
when we're looking at your bullet points, it could be
I'll line up right now.
purple.
That'll be embarrassing.
Yeah, I think
it's your favorite color. That's what it is.
Great. Fabulous. So like when I look at like Alan's and it's orange and Patrick's is green and Michael, I feel like you write, like you talk, and it's the best thing in the world, Michael Walsh. You were just so eloquent. I learned so much from you. But when his shows up and it's like yellow, like I want a rainbow too.
It is.
For me, you're green. For me, you're green.
Yeah,
you are green for me.
Thank you, Patrick. That means a lot to me. Green for
You
girl.
are the greenest of the green.
Newsprint.
And shout out to Michael too. He just gave me a pep talk that I'll get there with summarization like Captain America, which is what I needed to hear because I was getting tired of this. So thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Oh man.
I'm still struggling.
Yes.
This feels separate from kind of my other creative and professional self.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have this habit that's beginning to form. I show up in the morning and I do the exercises. But like Rome and my Zettelkasten just still seems kind of like this foreign, it's like this alien, it's like the obelisk in 2001, it's like, I know it's this kind of thing that has lots of hidden meaning and dimension and value for me, but it still seems like quite separate and alien to me. So if I just need to wait and all would be revealed, that's fine. But, I really want this to become the water that I swim in is.
Do you see this guy's notes? Chad, your freaking notes are amazing, dude.
but I don't feel like it's, and maybe this is just a self-perception thing. Like, I don't think it's like, it feels disconnected from my creative life and my professional life. You know, it's like my side gig or like my side piece. It doesn't feel like integrated with.
Okay. Hold on. Ladies and gentlemen, can we let's just. Okay, tell me if this is creative. Okay, I'm like Indiana Jones discovering it at the end of a treacherous cave filled with traps and rolling boulders. I make it to the inner sanctum to find the well. It's simple, stone, mossy, low to the ground, trickling ice cold water.
That's a great picture.
It's so. Thank you, Nikki. Chad. It's just so, it's so blasé. There's none of you in there at all. I'm being facetious. Like, no, that's you.
Well, yes, thank you for the compliment, but it's like, that's not my. Again, it feels like separate from my work, and maybe I need to flip it and make what I'm writing in Rome my work, and like fuck what I'm doing and getting paid for it. Like, focus on writing my Indiana Jones stories.
Here's my question though for you, Chad. Should it be like work? Because if you're enjoying it, right? I mean, maybe you love what you do, maybe you don't. But if it gets to be too much like work, right? Then maybe it loses some of that appeal. Maybe it feeling separate.
Alan with the rebuttal
allows you to be creative like this.
That's a good point.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, I think it has to do. I mean, we all have different goals or objectives that we have with this communication partner. So I think maybe I'm kind of missing the point, or there's a dissonance between kind of my goals and how I'm showing up and how I'm writing in it.
What are your goals?
I want to be a prolific, creative individual, both kind of as an artist and professionally. I'm a teacher, trainer, consultant in my professional life, and I'm a game designer, tabletop role-playing writer and fiction writer, in my other life.
I mean, I could keep reading if you want. I mean, this is fucking phenomenal, but I mean,
maybe I just need to just shut up and start publishing and get busted out on my own.
Well, maybe it is also. Maybe it's also just giving ourselves a break. Like, obviously this is tough work. Having to look at ourselves, it's tough work to tell ourselves that, shit, we might have been doing it wrong. It's tough to go, man, I just talked about top-down structure and I've been doing that my whole freaking life. And I'm talking about all the bad things about it. And then I talk about bottom-up structure and I'm like, of course. I mean, I think there's a lot of things involved with this. This is very complex. And I challenge you and the rest of the group to remember that those low points allow us to appreciate the high points. And if anything, those low points shape us and give us character and give us a voice that's so unique, in my opinion. But it's also just, I think that's where the power of the group comes in too, because it's like, I think, Chad, you're just voicing what we're all going through, what we've all felt. Imposter syndrome, not good enough. And I think the courage that it takes to talk about that, though, is what matters.
Can I ask 2 silly questions? No, they're not such thing as silly questions, so the answer is no, isn't it? But
yes, no silly questions.
The first thing is,
please ask free.
I'm new to this group sharing Rome thing, and I was just writing, like, just for me, like, just writing, following the work, doing the process or whatever, and kind of didn't realize that you went in and looked at everyone else's stuff. Now, I don't care people looking at mine. I am an open book, and it doesn't make a difference. I'd still just write for me. But I am not used to, like, going in and looking at other people's stuff, and it just feels like a little bit of a violation of privacy. Is that normal? Is that just me and just got to get used to it? And And what color am I? That's the other silly question.
No, we had the discussion in the chat room. I think the first time you enter someone else's space, it feels a bit like peeping Tom, but you get used to it. You get used to it.
I'm sure there's so much
You're purple. You're purple, by the way.
Okay, cool.
On my end.
Yeah, you're purple for me too.
Thanks, Chad.
I think it's a good question.
For me too.
Well, you know, maybe if you are reading other people's work, it will show you what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking now.
Mm-hmm. Nikki, for me, when I started reading, like, well, actually what happened was that when I was in my graph, I saw that Alan had written something and somebody else had written something, and I don't know if tagged is the right word, but had
They came up in your linked notes. Yeah, that's Joshua wrote me, and I was like,
and I
we're getting normie shirts for you too, by the way.
I'll wear it with pride.
I'll send you my address. But actually, this is so funny. Part of how I knew, and I've just written it in the chat, part of how I knew Michael was very serious about Rome was that he bought a t-shirt. So, you know, sometimes that's all you need. But truly, like, then I went in and I realized, oh gosh, I can read everyone else's stuff. And as I started to read, then I was like, oh, I see how so-and-so kind of structured that. And then I would see that they could do something like I'm not kidding, guys. I probably spent like 45 minutes on trying to change the bullet colors. Like, but I would see things that they did, and then I would kind of be like, oh, I see how that thought went from like here to here. And I see that they're not necessarily so concerned with like sentence structure or so much as free flow. And like, I would see how this kind of functioned, even to the point where then I figured out like the tabbing of the bullets and stuff. And I know that sounds really simple, but it's like, I think it was Mike previously who said like he didn't want to engage with a course. And I'm very similar. If I sit down and I take a course on how to roam, I will get very caught up in the how I should do it, you know? So I'm really just trying to let it be. And reading other people's notes really has actually taught me quite a bit. And it's also made me think, oh gosh, like why hold back on any of this? Like, why try to make it grammatically perfect, or why try to really arrive to a thought when actually I'm trying to learn the system, not necessarily thinking that I'm going to use anything that I write right now in any specific way. So for me, that's been really freeing. Whereas I could see that for other people, maybe they want to use this 42 days to really like be very specific. For me, not so much. The other thing to echo just quickly is, Chad, I feel very much similarly. Like I'm not sure yet where this integrates. And I notice myself sometimes having the resistance of like, oh, I don't want to sit down and write. But then it's like, but like, why not? Like, I want to do this. No one's making me do this. And then kind of wondering like, but what and how where does it fit? So I can just also identify with that. But reading other people's pages, again, has helped with that, because I've been like, oh, I see that you're using it for this thing, or you're writing on that topic, or that's interesting. Maybe I don't have to present as like so smart all the time. I can actually just like write.
I think that's my ultimate goal, is for people that are writing very, I know what the hell I'm talking about, to read the openness and the no rules, no frills, it's just me way of writing. Because the ones that have the hardest time through this entire 42 days are the ones that know what they're here for. Because I can't teach them anything. I can't have the group teach them anything. And it's, you know, but by the end of it, they're like, shit, why the fuck did I do all that stupid shit? Why was I holding on so much? I hear it, but, you know, it's still. So this is what I want to do.
Wasn't that in the paragraph? The people who thought they knew it all didn't know it. Yeah.
Yeah. The smart, the poor student and the good student.
Yeah.
So let's just
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah. So Dunning-Kruger, thank you. Was that Daniel? Or is that Chad? Yeah, Chad. Okay, so it's let's just do a lightning round. Let's just go all the way down, 1 to 2 minutes on what you're learning, what you're getting out of this, what you're excited for. Let's start with Leah.
Oh, you know what? My first thought was actually just that I hope to be as elegant and smooth and relaxed as Michael Walsh one day. And my second thought was that I also love buffs, Chad. And my third thought was just how freaking grateful I am for this community. I love that I have these wonderful like side conversations, and I'm just like it's 5:10 my time, which is I think 2 hours and 40 minutes of this phone call. And if any of you met me in real life, you'd recognize that it's not often that I just sit down and really dial into something. I tend to be much more like, it would be more preferable for me to have 2 or 3 things going at the same time as just listening. And this is just such a gift to me, and I'm so grateful for you all.
Nice. Nikki.
I'm just, again, like Leah said, just so grateful for everyone listening to my questions that aren't silly and just accepting me for being not a newbie. What do you call it?
A normie.
A normie. And just the light bulb moments that are going off, and just the inspiration that, and the hope I have in what this is all doing, and the trust and the gratitude for just showing up here. And I've just signed up to go back to university because of how inspired I am, because of the learning and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you.
Russell, what's up? Where you at?
Whew. Man, dude, this is week 2? Man, 4 more weeks of you guys. I can't fucking wait. My goodness. Oh my God. Yeah, I just love the fact that everyone in this room takes thinking seriously, with the way that we all have these thoughts and are willing to share it with people. You know, like, accumulated knowledge is dead knowledge. And the fact that I get to share it with you guys and are being receptive about it, and I get to have myself like be reflected, you know, with each other. And, you know, it's just like a conversation partner, if you will.
That was good.
I say, Russell, you barely said hello and boo to a goose in the first session. Now look at you. 1 minute.
Nick,
Now we can't get him to shut up. What the hell is this?
Amazing.
Oh man, if it wasn't for you, I swear.
I love it, dude. Is it Anna?
Anna, yeah. I was thinking that's hopefully going to be me at some point. I feel like we're 16 now. It's a bit more comfortable for me to speak than when we began. I'm not really good at speaking in public. I guess that's one of the things why I'm here also. I really want to learn how to take notes, and I really want to learn how to speak to people in big groups. And this is where I'm at for now. Trying to let go, trust the system, trust Bo, and yeah, meet people.
Welcome to the Normies Club, Anna.
The Normies Club.
Someone get this girl a t-shirt.
Oh, and also, I was hoping we would, at this point, we'll get to 3 a.m. because at 3 a.m. there's a meeting from the other group.
Oh my goodness.
But it's 1:15, so might as well.
Oh my
That's
God.
awesome.
Who's next? Alan. What's up,
Yeah,
Alan?
no, I'm extremely grateful. I mean, for the opportunity to be here, and I really appreciate, you know, how Bo found this thing and kind of refined it, but shared it, right? Think of all the people who know really cool things and who are doing really cool things in silos and don't want to share it with anybody because it makes them feel special. But instead, you know, you kind of did the reverse and you shared it. So thank you very much. I'm also grateful to everybody here because we're all different people with all these different ideas, but we're talking and we're sharing things back and forth. And I can take bits from different people. And at the end of the conversation, I'm a much better person than I was when I started because I'm assimilating all these different things. And I'd probably say the last thing is it's really changed what I do with work because I was using Evernote and these kind of, you know, top-down systems, and I couldn't find Cisco stuff and VMware stuff. And, you know, now I've got this structure where I can do that. And that's going to make me so much more effective at my job and save so much time. And now I'm kind of wrestling with how do I get my other coworkers, my other engineers who would dig this just as much to get here. And that's what my next challenge is. That's what's going to be the struggle because I can't explain it as eloquently as Bo, but I'm hoping by the time this is done, I'll learn enough to be able to say, hey, look at this really cool thing that I'm doing. Wow, how did you do that? You know, me explaining it to you would be a disservice. You need to join this book club, right? You need to come over here if you really want to learn it. So that's kind of my thoughts. So thank you.
Awesome. Patrick.
Yeah, I'm really digging and enjoying the way you structure this one. You know, at the beginning, I really thought, you know, come on, man, give me the system. I want the system now. Don't make me wait. And I really hated it for the first 3-4 days, I guess. But now I'm really getting it and digging it and really love discovering through failures and through experiences. And I'm not quite sure what's ahead, so I'm really looking forward. And I mean, this community here and this group is really awesome. I mean, we're close to 3 hours for me, and normally if I'm in a group or whatever, I would look at 10,000 other things on my other screens, and fiddle with my phone, which I haven't touched in the last 3 hours. So that's really something here. So really, thank you.
Daniel.
Right.
Oh, I'm feeling a little bit like an intruder here because I have to catch up 2 weeks of no work because for some professional reasons, you know. So I was feeling a little bit guilty to come and to join you today. I was curious, you know, and trying to jump in. But what I'm interested in is the processing the complexity to get it simple through filtering. I would say filtering the complexity, because there are filters in Rome, and how to use this processing system, as you said before, to get it simple. So that's what I'm interested in this process of getting it simpler through different filter system. It can be tags, it can be, you know, just the way we think. You have to use necessarily tags or filter any physical or words to make it happen. I would say it's more a mind process. So that's what I'm interested in. So I promise this weekend I will focus on day 2 and day 3. Maybe I'll make day 4 in one day or 1 week.
Take it slow. There's no rush. The videos are going to be up forever. You have access to the shared graph forever. You have the guiding writing prompts in there. Everything's recorded. Everything's in the graph. Sure. Yeah. For me, it's about being thorough.
So, but thank you for all of you.
I'm excited. Patrick.
Oh, I was
no, we already did Patrick. No.
Yeah.
We already did Patrick. Michael Walsh.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much, Leah and Alan, for that nice comments, because the fact of the matter is, I'm totally committed, but I feel like I am struggling so hard to get free of the top-down system. It is hard, but I'm enjoying that. And one thing that really helps is someone says, you know, hey, you know, you're doing fine, or I like what you said, or I like what you wrote. That just means so much because it makes me want to do it more. And I really appreciate it. And I notice in the shared graph, a lot of people are doing that for others. And I think that is so good. And I really think that part of Bo's secret plan here is that participating in the shared graph is going to give us a taste for not only learning Rome and learning how to think better, but networked thought and the benefits of thinking in a community. And we wouldn't get that experience anywhere else. And one other thing is I love starting off with the musical metaphor that Joshua mentioned right up front. I think I really relate to that. I was a musician for many years, and I just feel like, you know, we're a classical or a small jazz ensemble now after 3 hours, and we're playing really well together.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, Michael, what instrument did you play, or do you play?
Mostly guitar, but I play synthesizers and working on clarinet as well.
Yeah, Joshua and I had a little side convo about like
instruments that I play or that we play. I'm primarily a vocalist, but talking to him made me realize that, oh shit, like I really want to pick up the piano. So god dang it, Josh, we could probably all like jam out or something.
What I
Good to
wonder real
hear.
quick, I wonder how Bo feels. Because I mean, look at how you're impacting everybody's life. Look at just the action of you giving this away and deciding to share it. Look at all these comments. Look at everybody coming together. This is all because of the actions that you took. It was an earthquake that happened. These are ripples. You're at the epicenter. It's true. None of us would be here today and have interconnected with people the way we did and built some of the lifelong relationships that we have if it was not for one person who, in my view, is up in the left corner, which is Bo. That's a legacy, man. That's impact.
It's not about me, though. It's never been about me. It's
Mm.
not. It's not. No,
And
no,
that's
no.
why it's-
I
Yeah.
suit up. I show up, and I'm of service. And then from there, whatever happens, happens.
But that's why it's successful, because it was never about you in the first place. You made it about other people. If it had been about you, none of us would be here.
Yeah.
Right, and that was clear from the very first YouTube video with Robert Pacefield.
Yeah.
You know, that it wasn't for you. It wasn't about you. It was about something bigger.
I received that. Thank you.
And you can buy the T-shirt at the end.
Armies.
Deb.
Yeah, I'm just wow. 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 That's you know, I mean you guys are everybody, not guys, people, humans, wonder beings. And for me personally, I'm a super senior, you know. Super senior, retired, you know, decades ago. But this whole thing is bringing me, I don't know, it might sound hokey, but it's bringing me back to life. You know, they talk about people who have more time behind them than they do ahead of them. And sometimes if you let yourself dwell on that, you can get pretty depressed, you know. But this just wipes that out, you know, and you say, well, okay, if it's 30 days more than I have or 30 years more than I have, look at what it can become with this tool and with these things that I'm learning, and look at the interaction that's happening. And there's no such thing now, not really, there's no such thing as isolation. You could be, they talk about seniors being isolated in their homes and, you know, nobody comes, the children are off doing whatever and blah, 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 nobody comes to visit anymore. This also wipes that out because the community, it's right there. It's right in your laptop. You know, you open it up, Bing, and there's somebody you can talk to, you know, boom. And so the idea is embrace this, internalize this, and the thing that they talk about forever is we all connected. It's not just verbiage. It's real. It's living. It's breathing. You can feel it. It's warm. It's cozy. It comforts you. It's wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Chad.
Yeah, I'm Chad. I'm checking out here at the indoor session. Yeah, adding to the gratitude, but I'll just kind of recommit myself here in public with all of you. This is my first time showing up in real time in one of these sessions, and it's been very enriching, but I've added all of your page links onto my page, and whenever I finish my own exercises, I'm going to be exploring your pages in the graph, and I've already discovered a few of you in my roams through the public graph, but I'm committing myself to further finding you all there. I'm really excited to begin to interconnect our thoughts and maybe at first sharing some encouragements, but then truly, you know, harnessing a collective creativity and intelligence that I think Rome can enable. It's, you know, we haven't experienced it yet. I kind of know that that's somewhere at the pinnacle or beyond the peak that we're climbing towards. yeah, I'm just, I'm here and committing myself to going on that journey with y'all, and just, being thankful to have the stupid idiot normies like myself to go on the journey. I'll seriously consider designing the t-shirt for that.
Elaine? Elaine?
Hello. If you remember last week, I said you're my people. You're still my people. I usually sit back quietly, but I did push myself out of my comfort zone and said I would be a reader. I love you guys. I love the vibe of RBC. So huge thanks to Bo. This week I was playing with a quote that was in my mind, so I had to go and look it up, make sure I got the quote spot on. But it's Eleanor Roosevelt. Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. And in my real life, I seem to be surrounded by small minds. But you guys, I get to discuss ideas. So thank you very much. You are so supportive. You're amazing.
That is good. That is good.
Look at Bo's face.
Eric, are you there? There we go.
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, everyone. It's hard to top all this. I'm excited about all this. It wasn't nearly what I was expecting. So I'm trying to take my time and really understand the process. And I think it was Chad earlier was talking about it, where it feels like it's a small part of my day to day, but it's not part of my, part of my work and my, main day. And I'm hoping I can incorporate that somehow, because that's what I intended to initially. But what I found is that, just going through this process of kind of tap into a little bit more of a creative side versus the work stuff, that, technical documentation and things like that. I'm getting away from that and just being more creative and everything. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Excited.
Yeah. I'll work with that. Just wait. Grigory.
It's 2:30 a.m.
This is why I picked on you last, or I have
Yeah,
Joshua. I have Joshua last on purpose. I wanted him to stick around.
So I'm a little bit quiet today because I had a busy day and it's late. But let me tell you first what I'm struggling with at the moment. And it's an interesting problem to have. It's basically every time Sonke drops a reference. We saw it today when he dropped a reference on Kruger.
The Kruger, yeah.
Dunning-Kruger Effect.
Yeah.
And it's kind of in passing, just a few words about this effect. But what I know about it kind of contradicts with what he says about it. And what do I do? Should I go to the source? And then it will take, I don't know, a lot of time to go through the source, through the original article, to try to figure out what it's in here. But let's discuss this problem next time because it's late already.
No. Just, would you have written it differently? Sure. Like, surely you would have written it differently, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, from the same source, you have two different perspectives. But it's still coming from the same source, no?
I don't know. I'm not sure
So
about that.
if you went back to the original source of the Dunning-Kruger effect, and from your understanding compared to Sonke's understanding, even though what Sonke wrote in the book is his perspective and his understanding and his abstraction and interpretation, there's still room for you to go back to that same source and have your interpretation, abstraction,
yeah, sure,
explanation, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
That I can work with.
Yeah. Now, about what I learned from this group, but actually a whole lot. You know, we have discussed, I'm trying to recall, martial arts, right? We have discussed learning languages like Japanese. We have discussed music on several occasions. We have discussed thinking processes. So I'm looking forward to reading the transcript because I'm sure I missed a lot out of this discussion. So I'm very grateful for you all, and that was another interesting 3 hours of education.
Thank you. He's amazing, by the way. If you guys haven't met Gregory, he's amazing. Joshua, can you close us out?
Oh, I certainly can. I had to find my my mic button there. Yeah, so I'll start off. I'm humbled, really, truly humbled by everybody here. Mostly because I feel like I'm a thief. You know, I've probably taken far more ideas from everybody inside the graph, inside the conversations than I could hope to give out in a lifetime. So for that, I would say thank you. In my previous life, if you want to say, I was more of a mechanic. I had a very, very unique skill set. Once I retired and shifted into this, I'm taking my side hustles, if you will, and I'm kind of shifting them more towards like a prime hustle. Speaking towards Rome and the Zettelkasten, I don't want to belittle it and say I could care less. I know it works. I mean, clearly it works. If there's people on a path in front of you, right, and you can see them and they're on the same path you're on, you will inevitably get there. Just keep walking. It's simple. But the people, I think, are really what make this work, at least for me. I get more from the people and your guys' input and the way you view things, even if I don't agree with you. In fact, if I don't agree with you, I feel I probably get more because it's like, okay, I see where he's coming from, or I see where she's coming from. And I feel her enthusiasm. I agree with her because typically I don't sit down at this hour. And I definitely don't talk to people on the internet at this hour. No, there's something there, and there's something that kind of that it pulls you there and it holds you there. It's like an unnameable quality. So you all have that. I would thank you for that as well. But yeah, that's it. I hope I can offer more in the future. But so now in this life, I'm an artist. So I'm a mechanic who's had this artist trapped inside of him, and as that slowly comes out, that comes out through the writing. So it's kind of coupled, right? So even if we say Zettelkasten doesn't work for me, Joshua can't do Zettelkasten, and maybe Rome isn't, it doesn't serve its purpose. I'm still writing, right? So that artist is still coming out, and who knows? Chad was saying, a lot of the things, some of the things he does on the side, he has more passion for. If he moves that, towards the forefront, who knows what can happen? I don't. We'll see. Oh yeah, that's
I liked your Lego metaphors.
Oh yeah, so I'll tell you everybody that I'm a father of 2, right? So I got a 6-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. I'm a bit old to have a 6-year-old daughter, which is fine, but yeah. So I explain a lot of things like metaphor and and like Hello Kitty and all. Legos is my go-to because you can do a lot, and it also forces you to kind of think, and it fits really, really well inside of this. Every piece is important, especially in the Zettelcast, and every piece is important. And there's no piece that's more important than the next one. It's just a matter of how you stack them. So if you wanted to look in Lego, like your basic piece would be like a plate, because you can stack 3 plates to make a block, and you can put the blocks together to make a tower. Or if you don't want to be tied to making a tower, you can pile all the Lego up, and you'll have a tremendous amount of Lego, which is awesome. And you can do anything with it, or you can do nothing with it, and it can sit there until you reach over and you grab it again and you start playing with it. So yeah, Lego is a great tool, at least for me and my kids and my dog. But yeah,
ladies, and thank you to everybody, ladies and gentlemen. That's a night. I need to get ready for tonight and get the daily lesson up. Thank you so much. I'm gonna save the transcript as well. I feel like, Gregory, I'll throw it up on the lesson library. Thank you again. This is an honor. It's a pleasure to walk this path with you, and we'll see you all next week.
It's a wrap.
That's
Thanks
a
very
wrap.
much. That's a wrap.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, out here.
Have a good night.
Jazz hands. There we go.
I'll see you all. Bye
Yeah.
now.
See you. Bye.